Good afternoon, Director Kaloy. And good afternoon, everyone. Our program will begin shortly. And please be reminded that this session is actually recorded. So stay put, we'll be starting shortly. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Please be reminded that in order to receive a certificate for today's webinar, participants must finish the webinar and accomplish and submit the filled out pre and post survey form. I hope we're all well and comfortable as we'll all be sitting all together in front of our computers, laptops, mobile phones for the next few hours. It's a pleasant Friday afternoon. And before we officially end the work week, we are launching a new and exciting training program, the Cybersecurity Proficiency Improvement Training, or CPIT webinar series. This is a joint initiative of the United States Agency for International Development, or USAID, through its Better Access and Connectivity, or Beacon project, in partnership with the Department of Information and Communications Technology, or DICT. The CPIT is one of the various cybersecurity workforce skills development initiatives of USAID's Beacon with the DICT and other government agencies, which aims to enhance the knowledge and skills of professionals in various cybersecurity topics and domains that are easy to understand, practical to implement as they relate to real-world use cases. My name is Nate Alcain, Cybersecurity Skills Specialist of USAID's Beacon Project, and I'll be your host for this short launch event. Now, before we embark the journey to the universe of cybersecurity, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of DICT Cybersecurity Bureau Director, Engineer Carlos Reyes, USAID's Office of Economic Development and Governance, Deputy Director, Mr. Eric Florimon-Reed, USAID OEDG Senior Economic Growth Specialist, Mr. John Avila, and USAID's Beacon's Chief of Party, Mr. John Garrity. We'll know more about the CPIT webinar series in the next few minutes, and to formally open this launch event with remarks, let's all welcome Beacon's Chief of Party, Mr. John Garrity. John.
Thank you very much, Nate, and greetings to the more than, I see, over 340 participants in today's training. Thanks also to our key partners represented by Mr. Eric Florimon-Reed, Deputy Director of the Office of Economic Development and Governance for USAID Philippines, and also Engineer Jose Carlos Reyes, Director of the Cybersecurity Bureau of the Department of Information and Communications Technology. So as some of you may know, USAID launched this Better Access and Connectivity, or Beacon project, in 2021 to work closely with the government of the Philippines, in part on strengthening the cybersecurity posture of the country. A key pillar of our work is on training and workforce development for the public sector. And in the past, we have launched training initiatives to certify highly technical cybersecurity professionals to become CISSPs, or Certified Information Systems Security Professionals. And to date, there have been 20 government officials who have gone through intensive 40-hour and more training for the CISSP. We are also working with our US government partners, such as the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency out of the US Department of Homeland Security, to provide online as well as in-person training for government officials. Other US government partners include the US State Department, the Department of Commerce's National Institute for Standards and Technology, or NIST, as well as other nonprofit partners such as the US Telecommunications Training Institute, or USTTI. Today and in the past month, Beacon has launched two key initiatives to be able to expand our training opportunities for government officials of the Philippines. We launched the Entry-Level Cybersecurity Certification, or ECC, which is a self-paced entry-level course and certification that is for a limited time, free and offered to all because of partnership with the training body ISC Squared. I know Nate will mention the ECC in further detail, and perhaps we can also include the link in the chat box for the training participants to be able to register for that separate training program. I encourage all participants to go through the process of that registration on the page, and in fact, some other of our colleagues within Beacon and other projects are also going through that training process. Today, as Nate mentioned, we are launching the Cybersecurity Proficiency Improvement Training, or CPIT, and this endeavors to be a monthly webinar that will convene trainees and convey to them essential topics to grasp the basic fundamentals of cybersecurity. We hope that all of you joining the session today will utilize this as another step in your own path of development as a current or future cybersecurity expert in the public sector with the government of the Philippines. So thank you for joining us today, and please let us know how we can be of further support to build the cybersecurity workforce of the Philippines. Thank you, and back to you, Nate.
Thank you, John, for that message. And now, this event would not have been possible without the support of the United States Agency for International Development, or USAID. USAID has been a partner of the Philippine government for decades, accelerating inclusive and resilient economic growth and sustainable development in the country. Let's hear it from Mr. Eric Florimon-Reed, Deputy Director of the Office of Economic Development and Governance of USAID Philippines. Mr. Eric.
All right. Am I visible there?
Yes, you are, sir.
Okay, good. I'm outside in the compound here at the embassy because we're having a bit of a technical problem inside. So this works great. I appreciate your patience with this. So Director Reyes, met you before. Distinguished guests and partners, good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to today's activities. I'm pleased to represent the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, as the lead U.S. government agency that provides development and humanitarian assistance to save lives. USAID works to reduce poverty, strengthen democratic governance, and support partner countries on a pathway to sustainable development. I have some framing comments here, some framing remarks for the workshop, the whole series here. So in today's digital age, cybersecurity is a critical concern for individuals, businesses, and governments alike. As we all know, the Philippines has become increasingly vulnerable to cyber threats in recent years, with the country placing 4th worldwide in the list of most targeted by web threats, ranging from web attacks, remote desktop protocol attacks, mobile malware. In 2021, according to the cybersecurity firm Kaspersky. Also locally, the Philippine National Police is feeling the brunt of cyber crimes, calling violations such as online scams, data theft, some of the greatest threats that the Filipinos are now facing. So moreover, the urgency to implement stronger laws has recently been put forth at the recent World Economic Forum, when President Marcos committed before world leaders to establish a cybersecurity system in the country that will bolster government digitalization. In line with this, Senate Bill 1701, the Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Act, was filed, which aims to establish a framework to protect Philippines' digital ecosystem. These developments come at an opportune time when we're working to produce more cybersecurity professionals that are certified and experienced enough to carry out the increasing demands to achieve a cyber secure Philippines. In the recently launched report commissioned by USAID to IBM entitled National Cybersecurity Talent Workforce Assessment in the Philippines, it was affirmed that the country does have a severe shortage in cybersecurity talent, and this shortage is attributed to the lack of career pathways for practitioners, low salary for locally employed specialists, particularly in the public sector, and deficiency in government frameworks for cybersecurity roles and responsibilities. The report suggests two sets of solutions. The first one is the incremental track where the country should undertake awareness campaigns and hire more certified cybersecurity experts in government offices. In the second track, called the Jumpstart or Adaptive track, IBM recommends the appointment of an executive agency for cybersecurity, implementing a cybersecurity curriculum, and sponsoring a Philippine National Cyber Consortium. So there's two options which were outlined in the report. So that's why proficiency training is critical now. By providing the avenue to improve and deepen one's knowledge and skills, we can upskill our ICT professionals and keep them updated with the latest technologies and best practices in cybersecurity. This in turn will lead to a stronger, more resilient cybersecurity posture and contribute to the country's inclusive and resilient economic growth. So we are proud to launch the Cybersecurity Proficiency Improvement Training activity alongside our entry-level cybersecurity certification, a joint initiative with DICT, which aims to increase the number of Filipino cybersecurity professionals by cultivating interests and promoting career growth in the cybersecurity field. With these training programs, we hope to help Filipino professionals build a pathway to a rewarding career in cybersecurity. With opportunities like these, we can support the country's ability to withstand all forms of cyber attacks. To end, the need for proficiency and certification training in cybersecurity is crucial, especially in the Philippines, where cyber attacks continue to plague the governments, businesses, and individuals. USAID will continue to work with DICT and other government agencies to ensure that professionals in the ICT and cybersecurity field have the skills and knowledge to keep us safe in the increasingly digital world. As a friend, partner, and ally, the U.S. government, through USAID, will continue to support the Philippine government in building a future where digital technology promotes inclusive growth, fosters resilient and democratic societies, and empowers all, including the most vulnerable. So good afternoon to you all. Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. We're looking forward to a fruitful learning session today, and then monthly, at least through December, with these type of trainings. I'm very happy to see such a large audience for this, and I think we'll find it very useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. Now, the DICT Bureau is the component office tasked to implement the cybersecurity mandate of the DICT, which is to ensure the rights of individuals to privacy, confidentiality of their personal information, and ensure the security of critical ICT infrastructures, including information assets of the government, individuals, and businesses as provided for by the National Cybersecurity Plan. To share his insights on the importance of cybersecurity workforce development, let's hear from the Director of the Cybersecurity Bureau, Engineer Jose Carlos Reyes. Director Reyes?
Yeah, thank you very much, Nate. So, first and foremost, please allow me to congratulate the United States Agency for International Development, Better Access Connectivity, on co-organizing with the Department of Information and Communications Technology, the Cybersecurity Proficiency Improvement Training webinar series. I would like also to thank and extend my gratitude to a good friend of mine, Mr. John Garrity, Chief of Party, USAID Beacons Project, Mr. Eric Florimon-Reed, Deputy Director, OEDG, USAID Philippines, and all the USAID Beacon team for always supporting us to achieve a cyber-resilient Philippines. I just received my order from the Secretary last Monday for me to return to the Cybersecurity Bureau, though Undersecretary Paul Mercado instructed me to go here in Bali, Indonesia to attend the Indo-Pacific Economic Forum. So please bear with me. The signal may not be good here in Bali. The place is good, but there would be some intermittent signals. Anyway, in today's digital world, building cybersecurity capacity is essential for any organization to ensure the safety of our data and systems. Building security capacity involves a range of activities, from training personnel to implementing best practices and technologies. It also includes developing policies, guidelines, and procedures that help organizations protect their data, systems, and networks from potential cyber threats. As the number of cyber attacks continue to rise, it is but important for organizations to be proactive in building their cybersecurity capabilities and capacities in order to stay ahead of the curve. Here in the Philippines, or there in the Philippines, while there have been many instances of cyber attacks in the past, cybersecurity threats became more pronounced during the pandemic, when most of us were compelled to shift from physical activities to online, including businesses, purchasing, payments, and banking. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas itself reported receiving around 50,000 complaints related to online transactions in the past years, amounting to 400 or 540 million. With a sudden change to digitalization of almost every aspect of our life and our society, there is a stronger need to invest more in cybersecurity, not only in terms of ensuring a secure cyberspace, but also in promoting digital literacy or cyber hygiene so that our citizens are aware of cyber threats and are able to avoid them. Your DICT's Cybersecurity Bureau is tasked to implement the National Cybersecurity Plan and extend immediate assistance to all stakeholders for the suppression of real-time cybersecurity offenses, actively raising public awareness against development and circulation of false websites, infographics, and social media posts, and educate different relevant stakeholders on the relevance of personal data and how to protect it. With the Cybersecurity Proficiency Improvement Training, or CPIT, we are hopeful to enhance the knowledge and skills of each participants in various cybersecurity topics and domains. This initiative will also help increase the number of skilled cybersecurity professionals in the country. In this day and age, the line between the online and physical world is almost non-existent. Cyberspace has become an integral part of our lives. We heavily rely on digital technologies. We can no longer resist the change. We just need to harness the benefits we can gain from it and be vigilant against the dangers that it poses, not only to our personal lives, but even to our security and sovereignty as a nation. Our country is only as secure as we make it. We need to ensure that every critical infrastructure, government agency, business, and every Filipino are equipped with the resources they need to safely navigate the digital world. This requires a comprehensive cybersecurity workforce development. We're glad that our return, or my return, to the Cybersecurity Bureau happens also to be the launch of the USAID's Beacon's Cybersecurity Proficiency Improvement Training. We see it again as an opportunity to collectively roll up our sleeves and chart our common path and vision of a cyber-resilient Philippines. Lastly, the DICT Cybersecurity Bureau wishes the CPIT webinar series a success. On behalf of Secretary Ivan Uy, Undersecretary Paul Mercado, and Assistant Secretary Jeff D., thank you very much, USAID Beacon, for the partnership. Maraming salamat po at magandang hapon po sa ating lahat.
Thank you, Director Reyes. Now, before we officially end this afternoon's quick launch event, I would like to request John Garrity, Eric Florimon-Reed, and Director Jose Carlos Reyes to please join me and turn on their cameras for a photo opportunity. Please hold for a few seconds as our Beacon colleagues take a screenshot.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Eric, Director Reyes, and John, and everyone for joining us in this quick afternoon CPIT launch. Please stay tuned for some announcements, which I believe will be flashing in a bit. Last month, USAID's Beacon, in collaboration with the DICT, also launched the entry-level Cybersecurity Certification, or ECC. The ECC is free and open to all Filipinos, with emphasis on government employees from national to regional and local government offices and units. ECC avails of ISC Squared's new entry-level certification called Certified in Cybersecurity. The next CPIT webinar after this one is entitled Introduction to the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, Standards and Frameworks for Cybersecurity, will be on April 28, 2023. That's next month. We will be sending invites, so please keep visiting our information page and watch out for your on your inbox. So we'll be sending the invite to you. So the QR code is currently flashed on the screen. Please feel free to register to our entry-level cybersecurity certification training. And now we have a few more minutes before we start the first webinar. We'll be getting back to you in a short while. Thank you.
we are also taking action to minimize cybersecurity threats.
As an archipelago, the Philippines relies heavily on communications and logistics networks to connect its various islands and regions. Limited connectivity affects the delivery of public services and poverty alleviation programs that help improve the quality of life of citizens, as well as hamper economic growth. Beacon is a 5-year project of the United States Agency for International Development, or USAID, in the Philippines, that aims to accelerate economic growth and regional competitiveness by improving equitable and secure access and connectivity to information and communications technology, or ICT infrastructure, and smart logistics. Beginning in 2021, Beacon is engaging partners from the public sector, the private sector, civil society organizations, and the academia to advance digital infrastructure development in the country. Beacon seeks to bridge the digital divide in the Philippines, a divide that spans gender and society, by enhancing the capacity of government agencies, boosting private sector investments in the country's internet, and increasing technical capacity for women and men to participate in the digital economy. Beacon supports the improvement of policy and regulatory action and reform, coordinating with government and regulatory agencies to improve governance and sustain competition in the ICT and logistics sectors. The project also enhances the cybersecurity capacity across Philippine government agencies, increasing the number of cybersecurity trained professionals, encouraging the adoption of international best practices, and employing a transparent multi-stakeholder process to increase cybersecurity protection. Through Beacon, USAID and its partners will help advance resilient digital infrastructure development in the Philippines, helping Filipinos across the country grow and prosper through the digital economy.
Good afternoon. Is everyone ready for the webinar? I'll also be your trainer for today. Thank you for joining us, and we do hope that you stay until the end of today's lecture. If you have any questions, please feel free to submit them via the Q&A chat box. Just click on the icon found at the bottom part of your Zoom screen, and we will try to answer all your questions at the end of the lecture. So let's begin on this journey. I'll just be sharing my slides. Anyone see my screen? Okay, so let's begin embarking the journey of the universe and the fundamentals of cybersecurity. My name is Nate Alcain, the cybersecurity skills specialist of USAID's Better Access and Connectivity project. Now, a bit about me, your instructor for this training. I have over 10 years of experience in cybersecurity. I started my career in consumer device protection, so it's anti-malware. And then I moved on to network security, where I handled next generation firewalls, unified threat management, network access controls. Some of these may not be familiar with you, but we'll be discussing these later on. Then I moved on to security consultancy assessments. I also did some vulnerability assessments and penetration testing as consultant. And this we'll be discussing as well later. And I'm also a training instructor for cybersecurity courses and speaker on different cybersecurity topics. I am an ECE, Electronics and Communications Engineer. So for those who are ECE out there, hello. I'm also a Cisco certified network associate, routing and switching, and I handled Fortinet firewalls before, got certified as well on level 4 and level 5. Also CompTIA Security Plus certified and Certified Information System Security Professional, or CISSP. And for this webinar, here is our goal. At the end of this webinar, you should be able to define what cybersecurity is, because sometimes people tend to have their own take and interpretation and definition of cybersecurity. So at least for this webinar, we'll be able to establish a standard definition. So we'll be speaking on the same language. And then you'll have an idea on the different domains of cybersecurity. So there is a number of them. When you say cybersecurity, it's not just limited to, say, hacking or scams or so on. And then you'll gain fundamental understandings on the CIA Triad, the threat actors, types of cyber attacks, risk management. We also have the pillars of cybersecurity and basic cybersecurity protections. So let's begin this session by defining what cybersecurity is. Now, according to the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which is a US agency for promoting innovation and industrial competitiveness by advancing measure of science, standards, and technology, and in ways that will enhance economic security and improve quality of life, that's the NIST. Cybersecurity is defined as the prevention of damage to, protection of, restoration of computers, electronic communication systems, services, wire communications, including information contained therein to ensure availability, integrity, authentication, confidentiality, and non-repudiation. This may be a lot, but don't worry, we'll be breaking this down in a bit more detail. So, bite-sized. We begin with the first part: prevention of damage, protection, restoration, which is included in the definition, which means it's not just about preventing. Preventing damage is also about protection and restoration. Preventing damage means you do not want things happening in the first place. An example of this is if you have a house, you put gates and fences around because you do not want bad guys to do bad things inside your house. However, there is no perfect prevention mechanism. Eventually, whatever we have in place to prevent bad things from happening could actually fail. And what happens? What do we do when those preventive mechanisms fail? So if someone manages to pick the lock of our gate and then enter into our perimeter, how do we defend? And that is the part of protection. You have protection in place, defending against and minimizing the damage that could possibly be inflicted by a bad actor coming into your premises. For example, if you have a guard dog freely roaming around inside your fence, so if the fence fails and a bad guy comes in, you have a protection. You have a dog that could attack the bad guy. Now, still, some protection mechanisms could fail. What if the dog was sleeping? What if the dog didn't notice? And damage has been done. So apparently the burglar broke into your fence, went into your house and stole your TV. So damage was done. Part of cybersecurity, aside from preventing damage, protecting it, is also restoring things back. So an example of this is if the TV was stolen, you could use an old TV lying in the basement and replace for that stolen TV in the living room. The idea behind is that the old functionality of a living room where you can watch TV was damaged by the attack, but you have a restoration mechanism to restore that functionality where you can, again, watch TV in the living room. So that's prevention of damage, protection, and then restoration. And then we go to the second line. We prevent, protect, and restore what is covered by these three. So it covers computers, electronic communication systems and services, plus the information contained therein. Once you say systems or services, it's a combination of workstations, servers, mobile devices, network devices. And in these servers or computers and connected through the network, the websites, web applications, we have software, we have databases. They're all running in a big ecosystem offering different services. For example, we're all familiar with social media. We've been using social media for how many years now? Has anybody wondered what's really happening in the background? So you took a picture and then through your mobile device, you're going to send it to a friend, perhaps somewhere in the US. Now, what's happening really in the background? You took the picture, your phone records it, and then to send it to someone overseas, your phone has to send the file through your Wi-Fi, and then it's received by a router, which is what the internet service providers provide to our house. And then from that router, it goes to the service provider, PLDT Globe or whoever. And then PLDT Globe or whoever your service provider is connects to different other providers. And then that goes out of the country and then is received by US through another service provider. And then it gets delivered to the home and then to the router of your friend or whoever's going to be receiving it, and then to the phone of your friend. So that's kind of the back end, the big picture. That's a whole system, a whole ecosystem which cybersecurity aims to prevent damage on, protect, and restore in case of any issues. So we have network connections, terminations, and of course the data. The data, for example, the picture you took. So from the moment it was created and you did some edits on it, so there's processing that happened. And while you are sending it, whilst it is in transit, meaning from your phone to the Wi-Fi signal, to the router, and then to the internet service provider, to the other side of the world, internet service providers and so on, and then going to the phone of your friend. And then storage. So we have sent a data, could be a file, could be a picture, could be a video. Once it is stored, how is it protected? Is it something that's easily accessible, or do we have some protection in place to ensure that it's not accessed or it doesn't get hacked? And one last thing is disposal. I want to cover this because for some people, or in a different interpretation perhaps of cybersecurity, some people think, nah, why would I protect something that I'm about to dispose? Now, when I was working back in handling network devices, so we'll be discussing this in a bit more detail later on. So the network devices has, for example, a firewall, which is where the internet is connected and it protects the organization from attacks coming in from the outside or the internet. So it has a hard disk inside. The hard disk records all the traffic that's passing in and out of the company. So imagine this is the internet and you have here a firewall, and then this is the inside of the company. Now, inside this firewall is a hard disk. The hard disk records all the details passing in and out, so it's contained in there. Now, once this specific device called a firewall is about to be disposed, it's end of life, it's no longer working as it should because no longer support, etc., etc. This hard disk inside contains critical information. As part of cybersecurity, there should be a proper disposal of this device, wherein it should be either destroyed or there are other disposal mechanisms in order to ensure that this file or this hard disk doesn't end in the wrong hands. Because if it does, there might be information there critical to the company, and then that will be considered as a breach as well. Okay. Now, and lastly, to ensure its confidentiality, integrity, and availability, or we call the CIA, we'll be discussing this in a bit more detail later on, and authenticity, which means the integrity is verified before, the identity, sorry, is verified before allowing access. So if you log into your Facebook account, it asks for your email address, right? It asks first, who are you? Tell me who you are. That's your identity. And then you provide a password to prove that the identity you say you are. So I log in and say, I'm Nate. Hey, Facebook, I'm logging in. My name is Nate. And then Facebook is going to ask, all right, Nate, prove yourself that you are actually Nate and not claiming to be another Nate. Provide me your password. So once I provide the password, Facebook authenticates me, has verified me that I am Nate and I am allowed to access. That is authentication, ensuring that I am allowed to access, I've been verified. And lastly, the concept of non-repudiation, which is the identity or the user, in this case, for example, me, whatever I did on Facebook, I cannot deny having done that because all the logs, everything points back to me having done that activity. There's strong evidence that I did this. So these are some key concepts and definitions that you need to be familiar of in the world of cybersecurity. You will be hearing this quite a lot once you are in the field and doing your day-to-day work in cybersecurity. And then for those who are looking at cybersecurity as a career, again, these are some of the terms that you will be encountering as you go through the cybersecurity career. And then we have the CIA Triad. This is actually kind of the heart of cybersecurity. So we have confidentiality, which means no unauthorized access happens. So everyone accessing any server, any resource, any application, any software, any server, any network device, any website, in the world of cybersecurity, they should be properly authenticated, which means they should be authorized before they can actually access. Integrity, on the other hand, ensures that no improper or unauthorized changes or alteration happens. So let me give you an example. If, say, there is a school, and then the school has conducted exams to all, say, 500 students. So the exams, the results of the exams are recorded on a certain database. So they have a system where all the exam results are encoded there and it's just there. Now, confidentiality makes sure that unauthorized people, if you're just someone from the outside, could not access that database of exam results. That's confidentiality. You're not authorized, you cannot access. Now, integrity ensures that these grades encoded are the actual results. What if somebody, while they do not have access, manages to, say, drop a certain USB with a certain virus in that USB, and then somebody in the school picks it up, plugs it into a computer, and that computer accesses the database and basically randomizes all the grades in there. So the bad guy who dropped that USB didn't really have access to classified or confidential information. He didn't see the grades, but he's managed to alter them in an unauthorized manner. He's not authorized to change anything. And now the entire database has been compromised. The grades are no longer accurate or just randomized and so on. So that is integrity. And lastly, we have availability, which means timely and reliable access to use of information. So you manage to protect confidentiality, yes. Unauthorized people aren't accessing my software or my application. I got it covered. And then integrity, I have it covered as well. I deployed this, and that, and so on and so forth. But You forgot about availability, which means you have placed cyber confidentiality protection and integrity protection, but it went down, power went out, or you missed this, and that. And at the end of the day, the teachers could not access the grades. The students could not access the grades. So the three components of the CIA Triad build the heart of cybersecurity. You have to ensure that these three are protected. And if you breach any of these, you would have breached cybersecurity. So that's CIA Triad. Okay. And then this is the universe of cybersecurity. I know it's a bit small, so let's go ahead and zoom in. Now, we begin our journey by learning about the basics, the fundamentals of cybersecurity. So that's why we're having this session. And I do encourage everyone, please join our entry-level cybersecurity certification training. This CPIT webinar series 1 of Embarking the Journey is all about introducing cybersecurity to you. Now, to establish a more solid foundation of cybersecurity basics, the ECC, or the entry-level cybersecurity certification, has a corresponding exam. So it's a full course self-paced training with an exam. If you take the exam and pass it, you will have a certification which is recognized worldwide. So that's an added credential to use. I deeply encourage everyone to please join our ECC program. We'll be flashing the QR code later on again, and we'll be sharing the links as well. So we begin our journey in the basics or the fundamentals. You've taken certified in cybersecurity, or there are other basic or entry-level cybersecurity certifications out there as well. We have certified security specialist by EC Council. And oh, by the way, ECC is completely free for a limited time, so you might want to avail while it's still free. Normally, it will cost you $200. Okay, and then after being established with the fundamentals, you can move on to any of these domains. You can go systems architecture and engineering. So what do you do in systems architecture and engineering? You have cloud security, which means you subscribe, say, to AWS, Azure, or Google, these providers of cloud services. They may have their own vendor-specific trainings and certifications which you can take, and you can master the world of cloud. There are also certifications and trainings from ISC Squared and EC Council on cloud. Here are some of them. And then we have data security as well, which includes encryption. We'll be discussing this later. We have DLP, or data leak prevention, file integrity tool, and so on different tools and best practices as well on data security. We also have network security. This is kind of my expertise. I came from a network security environment where I used to deploy firewalls. Those were the days where I used to sleep on data centers, configuring these firewalls and network security devices and so on. So we have IDS, IPS, intrusion detection, intrusion prevention systems. We're going to be tackling a bit of a high-level overview of these, but I'm not going to dive deeper, this being a fundamental webinar. And then we have identity and access control. So again, once you try and access a certain system or service or a server or a website or an application, you have to have an identity. And them authenticating you is a form of access control. They are controlling who are allowed to access these. So they may also have some vendor-specific trainings and certifications. We have SSO for single sign-on. We have multi-factor authentication, identity access management, and we have activity event logging, SIEM, logs, servers, analyzers, which means every activity done by cloud, data security, network security, identity and access control has to be logged. So these are stored in a log server. And then endpoint. When you say endpoint, it could be your laptops, your mobile devices, your workstations, could be a server where we deploy antivirus and extended or endpoint detection and response. We have network access controls and whatnot. So that is the world of systems architecture and engineering. Now, if you do not want to go specific on vendor certifications, there are also some vendor agnostic certifications that you can take. Intermediate will be CompuSecurity Plus. It's the recommended next step after the ECC. And then we have the Advanced Security Practitioner, and for an expert level, you have the CISSP. Now we move on to the next busy part of cybersecurity, which is operations. So the world of network and security architecture and engineering, their main goal is to establish the infrastructure, design it, optimize it. But once it's already running, it's passed over to another group, which is the operations group. The operations group is tasked or is designed to, number one, monitor. So it's already running. So what is it really seeing in our infrastructure? So imagine if you have a company, you have this website, this application, this server, you have this mobile devices, kiosks, and so on. They are all connected in your internal network, and then logs are being recorded. Things are happening. Who is looking at these? Do we just let them run on their own? So that's the task of monitoring or security operations center. They should be looking at this. Any alarm, any event should be categorized, should be taken action upon, whether it's something that could be for now, right? We can not, check this out. This is just minor, or this is something that's critical that we really have to take action right now. And for that, there are also some vendor specific certifications like on SIEM, SOAR, threat intelligence. There are also some vendor agnostic ones like the SOC analyst or the cybersecurity analyst of CompTIA. Another function will be threat hunting. The idea of threat hunting is this. So we have an organization, we have systems that are currently running. We have put on our security and our security architecture and engineering group has placed the infrastructure, has designed the infrastructure, and passed it on to operations. Now, the idea is what's out there that could harm our systems and our organizations. We don't wait for attacks to happen. Threat hunting is, the idea of threat hunting is that we actively search what's out there that could actually hurt or harm our organizations. So at least we know, and if in case it arrives, if in case we encounter it, we know exactly what to do with them. Somebody is hunting these down and then analyzing it and then preparing the organization in case this kind of attack happens. So there's Easy Counsel, certified threat intelligence analyst, and then right, so it's running, we're monitoring, someone is actively hunting for threats, and then something happens. Then there's incident response. The incident response team are the ones responsible for taking action on this certain incident. So what they do is it includes, say, containing it so it doesn't spread, and then preserving the evidence that it actually has happened. And if you want to take it further, those evidence should be preserved in compliance to certain standards, so it will be admissible in the court of law. Which means if you're going to sue somebody, if you have a suspect and who did this, you have evidence here, which is compliant to a certain standard that will be acceptable in the court of law. Otherwise, some collection methods just wouldn't be admissible, and your efforts would have been put in vain for trying to sue somebody and using these evidence that wouldn't be accepted otherwise. So we have their we have their certified incident handler or CIH from Easy Counsel. And then if you want to properly investigate, so the idea with investigation is you want to trace the breadcrumbs, you want to trace back on things that has happened, a proper investigation, finding how they went in, what they did, along with the damage they've done, and analyzing the whole thing about what went wrong in our systems, why it came in, how it has done that, and so on. That is the job of a hacking forensic investigator. Also a training, there's also a training called Certified Hacking Forensic Investigator. And now, this is kind of on the flip side of things. So the idea with putting on a security infrastructure and doing monitoring, threat hunting, incident response, and incident analysis is to defend and protect. Offensive security takes the simulation, the side of the bad guy, simulates an attack. So basically what offensive security does is I will attack my organization, or I'm a third party, I am a certified ethical hacker, and I will hack another organization, of course, with consent. So this is something that's done in the industry with legal consent, signed documents. So what happens is I will hack the organization, and my aim as a certified ethical hacker or as a penetration tester is to discover all the weaknesses of that system and then report it to the organization along with recommendations on how they can fix it. So it's looking at your organization or at your systems from the lens of a hacker, because this is a saying that in order to beat a hacker, you must have the mind of a hacker. And in order to have the mind of a hacker, you must be a hacker yourself. So there's certified ethical hacking for that. Looking at your cybersecurity systems, infrastructure, network, servers, applications, and so on from the lens or from the view of a bad guy trying to hack through it. And then once you discover the weakness, you report it so it gets fixed. And the bad guys wouldn't be able to see it. Okay, so these are some of the certifications and trainings. Given these are certifications, like for example, Certified Hacking Forensic Investigator, there are equivalent full-blown trainings for these ones that you can actually take. And if you want to go generic, not so vendor agnostic, not so vendor oriented on the trainings, there's also Company Security Plus. Company Security Plus, being intermediate, covers these different domains, and the Security Administration and Operations by ISC Squared, or the SSCP, which covers security operations, and of course, at the expert level, CISSP. Now, moving on to audits and assessment. Oh, sorry, let's tackle some of the careers that you can have in the world of security operations. There's Security Operations Manager. You can be a threat hunter, red, blue, purple teamer. Red and blue, purple, or purple teams are different teams that try and, so red team tries to hack, blue teams try to strengthen, and then they do this again. So to ensure that all weaknesses, all those kinds of issues on cybersecurity are fixed. We have forensic analyst or investigator, malware analyst. So a malware or a bad software that causes damage has been discovered. The malware analyst tries to go in deeper into that. What exactly is it meant for? What does it do? Is it something that's really targeted to us? Did it just land here by error, and so on and so forth? And we have the analyst, penetration tester, and DevSecOps engineer. We'll be discussing this later in the slides. I'll go back a bit on the careers you have if you go on the systems architecture and engineering. These aren't actually industry standard or something that's defined that security engineer, because some organizations will call their security specialist a security engineer. Some may have their own take or definition of what a security engineer does and what a security specialist, but this being a fundamental session, the aim is to give you a big picture that there are different careers, and security engineer, architect, specialist, what they have in common is they design, they optimize, they ensure, they put things together, different technologies, different solutions, integrate them and make them work to protect the company, cover all aspects that could possibly be covered. Security administrator, that's the one who's maintaining these. And then we also have the analyst, like the analyst on the operations. We have cryptography engineer and cybersecurity specialist, cybersecurity, cloud security specialist, cloud security engineers, and so on. Okay, so let's move on to the audit and assessments. So this is where, well, we have policies, we have structure, we have network in place. So how do we ensure that according to company standards, it's operating in compliance to that? So that's where the auditors come in, and they cover the people, process, and technologies, which we'll be discussing later on. The idea is to, let's say, all right, according to company policy, laptops should not have games on them. They should not have photo editing software or anything like that. Now, auditors come into the play to see, is it really happening? The company policy says that there should not be any games on the laptop. What is being done to ensure that employees could not install games? And is it actually happening? Or do we have some workstations out there where the employees are actually installing games, playing? So we have Certified Information Systems Auditor. We have the PECB ISO 2700, but that's lead auditor, and the NIST Cybersecurity Professional 800-53 practitioner. But before taking that, again, Security Plus is a recommendation because it covers the different domains in a more deeper level than the entry-level cybersecurity certification does. And then we have the software or application security. So yes, we have an infrastructure, and then we have people monitoring it on the operations, but I don't really want to do that. What I want to do is code. What I want to do is develop websites, develop applications, and so on. This might be the perfect career for you, where this is to ensure that the applications or software you develop has already married cybersecurity during the time of development. It's been coded, it's been programmed with cybersecurity in mind to ensure that once we deploy it to operations, it's strong enough to defend on its own. And if bad things happen, it's already robust in itself. That's the best practice. That's what we wanted to happen. However, in the real world, even if we develop something that's already strong enough, sometimes there's just things we missed. Like I missed this certain line of code, and because of that, a bad actor was able to. So that's where the software and application security comes in. There's testing and evaluation, how to ensure that the codes, the line of codes, the software in itself, the application in itself is secure. During the development, there are different trainings and certifications you can take to ensure that you can develop something that's cyber secure. So certified application security, we have secure software development, and then we have application security engineer, and we have web application hacking and security. This is kind of one of the most common because nowadays, most applications are web-based. So back in the olden days, I'm not old, by the way, but back in the olden days, if you wanted to access your email, you have to install Microsoft Outlook on your computer. Or if you wanted to access it via a web browser, it's not kind of the same experience as you have when you install the actual software. Nowadays, when you access your Microsoft Outlook or whatever your email is, Gmail, the same experience that you have is now almost pretty much the same with the web, because it's now not just a website, it's now a web application. That's kind of how things are now. That's why it's called web application hacking and security. So some of the careers you can have are application security engineer, specialist, software engineer. You review codes, you ensure that it's compliant to come to certain standards, you test it, you do code review analysis, and so on. Okay. And then lastly, I don't want to go technical. I don't want to do monitoring. I'm not after coding. I don't want to do assessments, because when you do security assessments, audits, every audit you do. For example, is the company policy says games could not be installed. Provide me with an evidence that games are actually installed in these devices. So when you go to audit and assessments, it's all about asking, is this happening? Provide me with an evidence that it is actually happening. Now, if you're in that, and I don't want to do that, I don't want to audit, I don't want operations because this, and that. I don't want to design something. Then security governance might be your track. However, in this, this is a bit more kind of later into your career, because at some point, every one of us has to start somewhere in engineering, somewhere in operations, somewhere in IT audits or software application security before you reach governance. The idea is you have had a view of these other domains first before you actually try and create something that the other domains or the other departments should follow. But if you have been working in cybersecurity for a while, these are some of the trainings and certifications that you can take. For security managers, we have the 800-53 practitioner, the cybersecurity professional of NIST. We also have certified information systems auditor. You can go auditing in this certification, or you could also go and use that knowledge to ensure that security is being managed properly. And then we have Certified Information Security Manager, we have CISSP, we have Certified in Risk and Information Systems Control, Governance of IT, and then Certified Chief Information Security Officer by EC Council. So these are some of the careers. You could be already a security manager ahead, security director, chief information security officer, chief information officer, and governance, risk, and compliance manager. And a data privacy officer, which the data privacy officer is concerned on personally identifiable information. These PII are information about people. So names, email addresses, phone numbers, anything about a certain person that would identify that person is a PII, or personally identifiable information, and that is what the data privacy officer is tasked to protect. And in the country, we have a Data Privacy Act, which means by law, all organizations, all companies should protect the personally identifiable information of their employees and their customers as well. Right, so that is the world of cybersecurity on a high level. I'll be sending, I can share these to you once we also send the certificates. And again, we have an assessment later on, a survey of how you saw the training and a bit of quiz. So that's something to watch out for. Now that we've seen the universe of cybersecurity, let's go back and this time. So we are in cybersecurity because we are to prevent damage from happening. We are to protect an organization, and we have to restore functionality in case an incident happens. So we have to know, what are we up against? Who are we up against? We have threat actors that's out there and is acting as a threat to our organizations because of their capabilities. And one of them are script kiddies. These are kind of like the entry level as well in the world of threat actors. They are self-taught. They have none to minimal coding and hacking skills. These are, probably just watching on YouTube and trying to learn how to hack on their own. And they just rely on freely downloadable scripts, codes, and tools, and they're unable to develop their own. So going to Google how to hack and GitHub and other freely available online resources where they can learn about hacking. And then, because they are learning, the next thing they wanted to do is try it. Does it work? And so they are motivated by thrill. They feel thrilled doing this, and curiosity is going to work. What's going to happen? And then self-satisfaction where, hey, yeah, I did it, and so on. But given they are script kiddies, they aren't really much of a concern. However, in the real world, you won't be able to identify if an attack was done by a script kiddie. Not all the time. It's just like attacks are happening, could be done by a script kiddie or other threat actors and so on. But just for this fundamental class, it's good to know that this is also a threat actor against our organizations. And next we have hacker activists or hacktivists. They're basically driven by ideology. They have strong beliefs that they wanted to defend or they wanted to get a message across. And they target governments, businesses, and so on based on how they oppose their target's ideology. So there is a company that says this, and that. I disagree with that. And so what I'll do is hack them, attack them. Their goal is to breach, steal information, and expose those information or disrupt services of the organization. So because I don't agree with your ideology, I'm gonna fight you. I'm going to hack you. I'm going to put you down. Or sometimes, and there is a hacking group. I don't know if you have heard. The hacking group is called Anonymous. So what they do is they hack a certain web application, a certain target, and then they deface it. They place their own message in that website, and then saying what they wanted to say, their ideology, why they disagree, and so on. So they don't necessarily steal or expose information, but what they do is disrupt. So we have a website, let's say www.something.com. Anonymous defaces that by putting their own message in there. And everyone in the world who accesses that web page sees that message in there. And that's how they get their message across based on their own ideology. These things happen, and this is something to add to your knowledge about who's our enemy, really. And then we have the biggest of them. Yeah, probably this is the biggest. Cybercriminals. Now, we are employees, most of us, not all, we're working to earn for a living. And on the other side of the equation, the bad guys are doing bad things because they earn money. Same thing with scammers. Now, I think, yeah, we've all encountered that at some point in our lives where we receive a text message saying this, and that, or we receive a call or receive a message on our social media and so on, trying to scam us. Now, they're just trying to make money. They're just working. And it's kind of, I've actually watched a series where there are scam call centers in different parts of the world that are calling other people from other parts of the world, trying to scam them of money. And then at some point I thought, why are they doing bad things to earn money? I mean, there are lots of different ways to earn money, but why choose a bad way of doing it? And while I didn't really found a solid answer, but one thing that struck me was that if, for example, you are a scammer, while inside of you, you kind of feel guilty doing it in the first time. But for some people, once they earn their first earning from it, the ethics, the morals just dissolve in the background, and then they just do more because they're earning money from it. So that's kind of the reality of life on why there are hacks, why there are breaches or security incidents happening, because cyber criminals are just trying to earn money. So their goal is to steal money or steal and sell information. Put it this way. I am a hacker and I have just managed to breach Coca-Cola. I have managed to get hold of their formula for Coke or their soda. So I have that information. I'll go to the dark web, which is a whole different place of the internet. And I can actually sell that. Hey, any company that out there who wants the secret formula of Coke, I just breached them and I got a copy. I could sell this for $1.5 million. So everything remains anonymous in there, and actually people can sell information like that. Also some intellectual property and customer data and so on. So again, either steal money directly, like for say a bank where they steal directly from people's bank accounts, or what they do is steal information and then sell it for money. They are capable of developing their own codes, scripts, and tools such as ransomware, and this is the most popular and most kind of successful way of getting money from the victims. Ransomware, we'll be discussing a bit more detail later on, but the idea is it infects your computer like a virus, and all your files get locked up. So you cannot access your file unless you pay a ransom. And the ransom is not cheap. They're not just, all right, I'll lock your files, just give me $5 and I'm fine. I mean, I just want something for merienda. So no, they ask for millions for that. So it really is a big threat to organizations. And because they are earning, they are capable of learning, training themselves and spending on developing their own tools. So that's cyber criminals. And then they may even have a hacking infrastructure, a business model that monetizes their creations, such as selling or renting their own tools to script kiddies and other cyber criminals. Yes, this happens. There is actually a service called Ransomware as a Service. You can Google this, it exists. There are cyber criminals that are selling their products, selling their capabilities to other cyber criminals, and they're making money off of it. Okay. Next, we have state sponsored. Now, if the cyber criminals are the biggest, state sponsored is probably the most powerful of them all. Because why? They are backed by a country's government, and they are hired to attack, spy, gather intelligence, and so on from another country. The goal is to either extort the target government or steal proprietary secrets, military secrets, that's a high value target for them, and gain strategic advantage. I think there was, I just forgot where I read this, but the original design of the supersonic plane, supersonic fighter jet of a certain country has actually been stolen as part of a state-sponsored attack by another country, so they could also do their own version of that supersonic fighter jet. And since they are backed by government, they have access to advanced research and dedicated infrastructure teams along with political support. The government is supporting them to do hacking. Now, in a private organization, this is probably not something that you will likely see attacking you, but for us government specifically, this is probably the biggest threat that we have. And then we have sometimes, we're looking at the outside, people, script kiddies, we have state sponsored, we have cyber criminals, all from the outside who can attack us. But sometimes the attacks actually come from inside the organization in the form of malicious insiders. They are actually a member or even a former member of an organization who happens to still have access to the organization's resources, services, servers, web applications, and so on, and uses them against the organizational policy or to cause damage. This is typically done by disgruntled employees or former employees, where I felt like the way they treated me on this investigation, they just fired me with no, strong reason. I felt it wasn't fair and so on and so forth. I just wanted to retaliate. I still have access. I'm going to delete these files, and I know this will cause harm or will make life difficult for this organization. So that's threat actors. Part of being a threat actor, we have malicious insiders as well. Okay. Now, how really do they do cyber attacks? What are their techniques? What are their tactics? What are their tools? And how do they pull it off? There are different ways on how these threat actors do cyber attacks. One is denial of service. It's any type of attack that causes a complete or partial system outage. Now, when you say system outage, it's attacking the availability basically of a certain server, a certain web application, a certain network, and so on, wherein the legitimate users who wants to access that service or whatever it is can no longer access. That's an outage. Now, this is not just something that's done by, say, bombarding it or overwhelming the resources and so on. This can also be done by power outage. So if I am a malicious guy, a bad actor, a threat actor, and I am inside the company's data center where all the servers are housed in one big room connected to the network and so on, and I am really disgruntled. I wanted to retaliate. So what I can do is pull the plugs, disconnect them from the power, and that is a denial of service. It's called denial of service because I have denied legitimate users, I have denied them of access to this service. Now it could be done via resource exhaustion, which means I can send some malware or piece of code wherein that server will operate at 100% capacity, CPU, RAM, and so on, wherein it's just doing bogus processes and it's unable to serve the legitimate users. Could be power outage, could be redundancy failure. That's why we have duplicate devices at times, where if one of the device fails, the other can still operate, ensuring that the services are still running. And then we have a distributed denial of service. This one is the most common, where here we have an attacker that's commanding different slaves that, hey guys, let's attack the victim. So the victim, what the victim sees is I am getting a huge amount of requests. For example, this is, let's say, this is your company website. And what happens is on a normal day, for example, it's receiving 200 requests per second. Now, the attacker who's doing denial of service attack, what he can do is command these slaves, right? Let's bring this target down. All of you request 200 per second. So effectively 1, 2, 3, 4, effectively the victim is receiving 800 requests per second, something that the victim cannot accommodate. So what happens is resource exhaustion. At the end of the day, the victim only has limited computing capacity. And so what happens is they could not serve anymore the legitimate users because they are processing these bogus 800 requests. That's denial of service attack. And then man in the middle, where hackers insert themselves in the communication between a client and a server. So imagine if you are accessing your online bank account. So you are this one. You're trying to access your, let's say, bank. And then, because you have been compromised in some way, the bad guy here has cut the original connection, redirected the traffic to him, and then whatever you send to the web application goes to him first, and then he sends it to the web application. So he places himself in the middle, sees whatever traffic you are exchanging with your bank. And because he's sat in the middle of your communication, he can then make modifications to your requests. So imagine if you are transferring, let's say, 5,000 to a certain bank account. The hacker sees that and actually can add another 0 and then change altogether the destination bank account. Now, from your end, you send it to the bank, and then the hacker changes it, sends it to the bank, and then the bank responds, all right, yes, I'll do that, and so on. And then, all right, it's done. I'm going to report to you it's done. The hacker sees the confirmation, changes it back to 5,000 and the original account number, and then sends it to you. So on your end, wow, it's successful, I've done it. I'm gonna be just waiting for whatever you use for the, let's say, if you purchase something for 5,000 pesos and so on, I'm just gonna waiting for the product. But little did you know, it's actually a different story on the side of the bank. So that's kind of how dangerous man-in-the-middle attacks is. If you are accessing free Wi-Fis, which I believe we all do Although this kind of attack is not as common these days, but it still is possible. If you're accessing free Wi-Fi, so you're sat here, and then another person is sat here, and then we have a bad guy sat in here connected to the same Wi-Fi. They would be able to actually pull this off if these are just the free Wi-Fi. It's kind of one of the dangers of free Wi-Fi. But again, it's not something that's guaranteed to happen, but just to let you know that it's possible to happen, especially on Wi-Fi. And the way to protect yourselves when you are connecting to these free services is by using what we call a VPN. We'll be discussing this a bit more in the next few slides, but the idea with the VPN is that it encrypts all your connections. So if the bad guy manages to get in the middle of that communication you have with the bank, what he receives is just gibberish that he wouldn't be able to understand, because there is encryption happening, which we'll be discussing in the next few slides. Okay. So there, man in the middle. It's also an avenue for hackers not only to see, download whatever traffic is being exchanged between the user and the bank, or whatever web application is being accessed. They could also do modification, and they could also steal information from there. Let's say you try and log into your Facebook account. Somewhere in the middle, the hacker also says, all right, this is your password. This is your username. I'm going to take that. Then you go ahead and log in. It's fine. It's fine. And then later on, I'm going to use that same stolen credential to access their account and then change the password, effectively taking over your social media. So there, another tactic that we've learned is man in the middle attack. And we have social engineering. So I'm not sure if you have seen this video, but I will play it. See.
Safe people's passwords are. What is one of your online passwords currently?
It is my dog's name and the year I graduated from high school.
Oh, what kind of dog do you have?
I have a Chihuahua Papillon.
And what's its name?
Jameson.
Jameson. And where'd you go to school?
I went to school back in Greensburg, Pennsylvania.
What school?
Sorry.
Cool.
Hempfield Area Senior High School.
Oh, when did you graduate?
In 2009.
Oh, great.
It's like my cat's name and then just like a random number.
Okay. Have you had this cat for a while?
Yeah, she's my childhood pet.
Aw. And what's her name?
Her name is Jolie.
Jolie. Mm-hmm. So like a password of yours would be Jolie and then a number.
Yeah.
Like number 1?
Like my birthday.
Oh, when is your birthday?
June 12th.
Oh, nice. And what year were you born?
95.
Oh, great.
Mm-hmm.
So Jolie 6/12/95.
Yes.
Got it.
So you mean to give my password right now? No, I cannot do that.
But we all want to know what it is so we can tell you if it's strong or not.
Oh my goodness. Let me think. Okay, one is Tel Aviv. Yeah. 468. And then Israel. It's only 3, but it's, you know, it's for me it's strong enough.
Ireland 1 2 3 4. Gemma 1 2 3. Spelled Gemma.
Well, most of them are Italian.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Like
so
what? Like what's a good Italian password?
my grandma's name.
What's your grandma's name?
Maria.
Maria. So Maria is your password?
Oh yeah, now you know my password. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, the important thing is they learned
So that, ladies and gentlemen, is social engineering. It's funny, but it is the most effective way of hacking. I mean, a lot of cybersecurity breaches happen because people are easily social engineered. The idea is that if a company or if a hacker has difficulties or say couldn't find any way to hack a company or an organization or a system directly, what I'll do is I'll hack the human who has access to those services or servers that I wanted to have access on. So that is social engineering, the art of making someone do what you want them to do. It's easy, just ask people, and they actually give it. I mean, on that video, they're just manipulating the person into revealing their own passwords. It's the use of deception to manipulate individuals into divulging confidential or personal information. Or even if it's not about divulging information, it's all about asking them or manipulating them into making a security mistake. So this is not an attack that's directly towards the system, but towards the person who has access to the system. And in cybersecurity, we, the people, are actually considered to be the weakest links. But equally, if we are properly trained, we could be an asset to the organization as a first line of defense and being one of the strongest link in the organization. That's why you keep getting these cybersecurity awareness trainings. That's why you keep getting all the cybersecurity news about, hey, you should be aware of this. You should be, we get text messages from NTC, especially with the SIM card registration that's being rolled out, that no, do not believe anything that says you have to pay to register your SIM. Because that's social engineering. They will try and manipulate you and make you believe about this, and that, and then at the end of the day, gain money from that. So it's social engineering, again, is one of the most powerful, and actually a lot of breaches in the industry, even on the biggest companies, they happen because someone in the company has been social engineered. Phishing is the most common and most successful. This is sent via emails that appear legitimate, but they're actually meant to deceive the target. So emails like, dear Mr. this and that, your account is about to expire, your password needs to be changed and so on. Click here in order to change your password. Now, how do you spot these phishing emails? One is they will be requiring a certain action with huge amount of urgency. It's like putting you in grave danger. Like, if you do not do this, something bad will happen. Like your account will be disabled beyond recovery and so on. And number two is they will be providing you with links that you have to click. And those links typically are, if it says www.company.com, if you click it, it actually goes to another webpage, not the company.com. Not, let's say, if you go for example, if it says your Netflix account is about to expire, click netflix.com/account to change your password. If you click it, it goes to a different website that they have made specifically to get information from you. That is social engineering. And one, they have a strong urgency. Number two, they provide these kinds of links. Number three is something that's easy to spot. There are typically some mistakes in, let's say, spelling mistakes, or they use a language, improper grammar or grammar mistakes in the email. They will look like legitimate email. They will use the same logos and so on. But from these three, you'll be able to spot a phishing email. And if you are not sure about once you receive an email and you're kind of not really comfortable with it, please do ask a security professional you may know, or someone in the cybersecurity field that you may know. Hey, can you help me a bit? I just received this email. I just want to know if this is legitimate. This is something I do for my family. And I ask them as well that if you receive something like this, you can always consult me, so at least I can help. Right? And this is kind of a shocking truth, but amateur hackers, they try and hack systems. Professionals, they hack the people. There are different types of social engineering, which again will be discussed in further detail in the ECC. There's lots of different ways of social engineering, like phishing, like getting a call from someone like, hello, this is the IT department of your company. My name is and I've just noticed there is a virus in your computer. I need to gain remote access and so on. That's social engineering done on phone. And there's also whaling. yeah, literally whale, which is targeting executives that they very sophisticated emails with really professional language designed to fool executives. And then there's spear phishing. When you say spear phishing, it's targeting a specific group. So phishing is just broadcast, send emails, whatever it is, email goes. And spear phishing is targeting a specific group, like, for example, a certain group of people, like cooperative or something like that, that, hey, we are launching a new program in this cooperative, et cetera, in order to member, please click this link, and so on and so forth. That's social engineering. Okay. And then we have software or application attacks. These are combinations of codes, scripts, and tools designed to, one, identify potential entry points. So if you're running a web application, you're running a server, they have services, they have entry points for them to be accessed and be used. Now, in their default configuration, once you buy them out of the box, a lot of these entry points are actually open, which means anyone can access. Now, the best practice is to close those entry points so that only those entry points that are needed are the only ones that can be accessed. The rest are closed. But the reality in cybersecurity is that sometimes people just buy and then deploy and then forget about those other open entry points, left that in its current state. And so a bad actor comes in and say, all right, I want to know what are the entry points I have. Oh, I've discovered one. And I will use these scripts and codes and so on and so forth to discover what the weaknesses are of this particular entry point in the software or application that I am targeting. And once they have discovered the weakness, they will then try and exploit it by using, again, codes, scripts, and tools, which is basically designed to command or manipulate the target software or application. Let me give you an example. If you go to, let's say, facebook.com, you get presented with two boxes, one for username, one for password. So from a normal user, our perspective is, hey, it's facebook.com. It's asking me for my username and my password, so I might as well put it in so I can log in. From a threat actor's perspective, okay, interesting. I have here, there is a field that's asking me for my username and password. What if, instead of putting a username and a password, I put codes, scripts, or I use tools to enter things in here? What happens? How will the web application respond? Now, there are two ways. One is the web application can say, hold on a minute, I am asking for a username and password, and you're providing me all these scripts and codes. No, I'm not going to accept that. Drop it. That's not a valid input for me as a web application. On the other side of the equation, there will be web applications where I say, oh, the code is asking me to reveal the version number of my engine. All right, I'll give it. And then the attacker inputs another code. Oh, another script, another code is asking me to reveal what sort of software I currently have. Fine. Oh, another code. So there's one application that is secure enough to recognize that these are scripts, codes, and inputs and immediately reject them. And there are weak web applications wherein they accept whatever scripts and commands and they get manipulated. At the end of the day, through repeated process of that, the bad guys gain access to the target by manipulating that into doing things. So that's how they gain unauthorized access, which allow them to steal information and perform other attacks, such as denial of service and man-in-the-middle attacks. One thing also that hackers will do once they're in is to establish or maintain their foothold on your system. So what they'll do is, once I'm in, I will try to create a backdoor so that if this current weakness or entry point that I am in gets closed, I still have another way to enter the system. And another way to do that is, all right, I don't have any valid Facebook account, but since I'm in, I might as well create an administrator account for me. And so the next time they just go walk straight to the door with a properly valid credential to log in, because on their first entry via hacking, they managed to make themselves. So it's like, put it this way, if you are target an organization, you manage to breach them, you're not an employee, but because you managed to breach their system, you made yourself an employee. So the next time you come into the company, hey, I'm an employee, I'm valid. So that's one way that a hacker actually maintains access to systems. Okay, and then we have, so that's software and application attacks. And then we also have malware, malicious software. I think this is something that most of us are already familiar with. When you say malware, it's malicious software, basically any software designed to cause damage or harm to a target system. There are different types of malware. The most common is virus. It's just a piece of code that injects itself to an application or a file. So what happens is you have, let's say, a PDF or a Word file with some codes and scripts injected to it. And once you open that file, it runs and does all sorts of damages or whatever it's designed to do. We have worms, which are basically virus with spreading capabilities throughout the network. Virus needs to be executed before it does damage. So if you have an infected Word file, it's just sitting there doing nothing. It's a virus until you run it or open it or execute it, and that's where it explodes and does all malicious things. But a worm is different. A worm can spread and infect different computers already on the network. And then we have ransomware, which encrypts files and locks access until the ransom is paid. The sad thing about ransomwares is that there's no cure. Once you get infected with the ransomware, it's not possible to reverse the damage or decrypt your file. Because with the way that the mathematics and computing power, with the way the mathematics are designed, the computing power required to reverse the encryption they did is not feasible. If you have even the most powerful computer in the world, it will take years to just reverse back the files. So for companies who's been infected with ransomware, sadly, some of them just pay to get their files back. And even if you paid, sometimes there just isn't any guarantee that they will actually send the decryption file or they will actually give your files back. And the bad thing with paying ransomware is that you're just funding them basically. So it's in the cybersecurity industry, it's highly discouraged to pay ransom. Now, how do you combat ransomware? It's not something that you can work on once it's already infected the system. You just need to remove it from the network so it doesn't spread. But that is already done. The only thing you can do is if you have a backup, restore the backup and you're back to the previous state. But if you don't have a backup, that's pretty much it. You're done. Sorry, that's it. So that's the importance of having backups. We'll be discussing that later on. And then Trojans, how many of you likes downloading free software, free games, free applications, and so on? Sometimes they may pose as legitimate, but once you install, they actually contain something inside that will cause more harm. They have a malicious payload. It has all sorts of things. It could contain a worm, a ransomware, a virus, and so on. Then we have rootkits, which gain administrative access to target systems, effectively creating a backdoor. The goal of a rootkit is to implant itself so deeply into the system as a proper administrator, which has a capability not only to access a system, but also to make changes that will affect other systems or the users of the system. That's rootkits. And keyloggers, these are malware that once it gets installed on your device, it will record your keystrokes, whatever you type in, and then send it to the hacker or keep a file in there. And then one day the attacker will come back and then get that file. The danger with keyloggers is if you type credit cards, passwords, secure accesses, and so on, it's all recorded by the keylogger, which means once it gets sent to the hacker, they have now a copy of your credit card, access credentials, and so on. Now, the goal of cybersecurity is to reduce operational risk. Having discussed about the threat actors and the CIA Triad, and we have also discussed the definition of cybersecurity, so we now understand what cybersecurity is, what it's supposed to cover, what it's supposed to do. The goal this time is to reduce operational risk to an acceptable level by introducing a correct mixture of people, process, and technologies. So in a way, you might be thinking about cybersecurity. All along, I thought it's about completely eliminating all possible attacks. Or if I am cyber secure, I should not be getting an attack. Or if I am cyber secure, there's no way I'm going to be breached. That is a wrong belief. In cybersecurity, the question which asks, all right, we've deployed systems, we've paid this, and that, we've done all this. And then you ask, are we going to get hacked now? That's actually invalid. Why? Because the answer is always yes. You will be hacked, you will be targeted. Maybe not now. And maybe your cybersecurity posture as of today is strong, really. Everything is green. You're on the 99.99% availability and so on. But somewhere in the future, few years now, technology is evolving, cybersecurity keeps evolving as well. The threat actors, they also keep evolving and changing. New tactics will arrive, and eventually what you thought was secure will be something that's easily breachable and just snap. So it's actually invalid. And your goal as a cybersecurity professional is not to eliminate everything, not to prevent everything, and not to be confident that I am not going to be hacked. But your goal is to reduce risk to an acceptable level by using a combination of people, process, and technology. Not eliminate, reduce. We'll discuss this a bit more detail in the next slide. Now, what is risk? It's a possibility of something happening with a negative consequence. Let's start with that bit because it says risk. We have to reduce the risk. So let's start with this bit. The possibility of something happening with a negative consequence. The equation says risk is equal to probability times impact, where the probability says how likely or how often will a cybersecurity incident occur. How possible or how probable are we getting a cyber attack in the next few days, weeks, years? Is it very likely? Is it something? No, we're not really in the industry. Like, for example, if you are, say, a bank, no one is going to attack you for top secrets. So you will have an attack for stealing money from you. So attacks that are related to infiltrating a system in order to get secrets is not something that's applicable to you. It's something that's probable for your organization to have. And if in case that hack actually happens, how much damage will it inflict if it actually occurred? So those are the two components of the risk equation. The probability of something that's happening and what impact will it inflict to my organization. Now, of course, the bigger the probability, the higher the impact, the higher the risk. And to prove that, here's a short table. If you say we have something that's low probability and low impact, and that's just a low risk. If the risk is low, it's something that, all right, let's not prioritize this for now. It's something that we don't have to take actions immediately. However, if you have just deployed, say, a network or a service or a server, and then what happens is somebody has discovered a weakness in there, which is something that's of high likelihood that will be attacked or will be exploited. And then the impact is grave, meaning it has capabilities to bring down the organization, then you know that's critical. That's something that should be taken action immediately. And also in terms of cost, because there is an equivalent cost. Once you address high severity risks, there will be costs in doing so. Costs not necessarily money, but resources. You have to ask your administrator to, hey, do this because we need to address this, this risk. And then it's something that you will be spending on. So might as well spend on the critical first and then the low later. And how do we manage it? There are 4 ways. One is to accept it. Fine, it's just low. I'm good with it. I'm not really concerned. This is not going to have a bigger impact in my company. Or it's something that's within the level that's acceptable to the organization. So accept it. Once you accept it, leave it. Don't do anything with it. Just keep it on the record that it's actually there, and then just leave it as is. Mitigate means you take actions to reduce the risk to an acceptable level. So that involves, let's say, upgrading, doing patches, or changing configurations, changing the designs, and so on, in such a way that risk or the probability or the impact, so the likelihood or the consequence or the impact, you reduce one, you lower one in these equations, and you effectively lower the risk. And then we have transfer, which means if there's a risk, I have just put a server in there, it's exposed to the internet, that server has connection to my internal resources, which contains company secret. And that's higher risk for me, but I couldn't be bothered. I'm just too tired to do something for it. And then if it gets hacked, probably it'll cost me $2 million and so on. All right, what we can do now is I don't want to take responsibility of this risk. I'll transfer it. I'll get an insurance company to take care of the risk. If that gets breached and so on and so forth, and there's a whole lot of conditions and so on for this one, but the same as life insurance, if something happens to that, that company pays me because I pay him a monthly to protect this and so on. But if in case that fails, I get something. So that's kind of like life insurance, but in this case, in cybersecurity. And then lastly, we can just avoid it completely, which means, all right, I really do not want to take on this risk. I mean, let's probably just shut it down. It's not gain. Let's not do business there. I don't want that kind of risk. I don't want to accept it. I don't want to be bothered mitigating it. And I don't want to spend money transferring that risk. Let's just shut it down. That's avoidance of risk. Okay, now at this point, before we go to the pillars of cybersecurity, maybe let's take a quick 5-minute break, and I'll also be checking on your questions so I can answer them. So thank you. I'll be back after a 5-minute short break.
As an archipelago, the Philippines relies heavily on communications and logistics networks to connect its various islands and regions. Limited connectivity affects the delivery of public services and poverty alleviation programs that help improve the quality of life of citizens, as well as hamper economic growth. Beacon is a 5-year project of the United States Agency for International Development, or USAID, in the Philippines, that aims to accelerate economic growth and regional competitiveness by improving equitable and secure access and connectivity to information and communications technology, or ICT infrastructure, and smart logistics. Beginning in 2021, Beacon is engaging partners from the public sector, the private sector, civil society organizations, and the academia to advance digital infrastructure development in the country. Beacon seeks to bridge the digital divide in the Philippines, a divide that spans gender and society, by enhancing the capacity of government agencies, boosting private sector investments in the country's internet, and increasing technical capacity for women and men to participate in the digital economy. Beacon supports the improvement of policy and regulatory action and reform, coordinating with government and regulatory agencies to improve governance and sustain competition in the ICT and logistics sectors. The project also enhances the cybersecurity capacity across Philippine government agencies, increasing the number of cybersecurity trained professionals, encouraging the adoption of international best practices, and employing a transparent multi-stakeholder process to increase cybersecurity protection. Through Beacon, USAID and its partners will help advance resilient digital infrastructure development in the Philippines, helping Filipinos across the country grow and prosper through the digital economy.
Important to ensure that the Philippines has a national policy framework.
We must ensure we are also taking action to minimize cybersecurity threats.
Thank you everyone for staying, and we are back. Let me just share my slides again. Right. I think everybody can see my screen. I have some questions here. I cannot answer everything immediately now, but I will try. My colleague, we have a team of questions department here with 35 people. When I say 35 minus 34. My colleague out there is helping answering the questions, but I'll try to answer some of them. I might not be able to answer everything, but I'll get back on this to you. I'll answer the questions via email. We'll flash the Beacon email address later on, so you can still contact us. I have one on what is the best way to prevent or mitigate a denial of service attack. And there's lots of different ways, but in terms of best practices, because DDoS is one of the most tricky when it comes to mitigating, because it's all about capacity. So it's like a game of who has more and actually wins. If I have more capacity, then you can overwhelm, I win. If you have more overwhelming capability than my capacity, I lose. So one of the best practices here is to do rate limiting and so for example, and baselining. So here's the best practice. On a normal day, I know that I am getting 200 requests per second. Now, if it spikes into something, I might do some adjustments. Like I can see requests from these IP addresses, these locations. I will try and block them for now, limit them. Or another is, I'm not supposed to get these kinds of protocols. Why am I getting this all of a sudden? I can block them right away. So it's tricky, but one of the best practice in there is rate limiting. You really have to have knowledge of what is normal on your network. And then once the flood comes in, you know the normal, you would be able to identify which ones are the normal and then just eliminate them. So at least you have maintained the service available to your users. Right, so now let's proceed to the pillars of cybersecurity. The one misconception with cybersecurity is that it's just, it's all about network and devices and technology and security solutions. It's not. It's composed of people, process, and technology. Again, as mentioned, in the goal of cybersecurity, we have these three pillars. Okay? People. Employees create some of the biggest risks to cybersecurity. However, when they are trained, they are the organization's greatest asset and first line of defense. Why first line of defense? Because it's them that's working. It's them that's interacting with the different partners, customers, and they are the ones that's facing the world out there. They are the ones who's talking, sending emails, making communications, and so on. So technically, they are the frontliners. So if you empower them, they become your first line of defense, right? But if they are not really aware about cybersecurity, then they are the biggest risks. Why? Being exposed to the elements means that anyone can come in and try to manipulate your employees. And if they're not really prepared for the situation, they could fall victim to a certain hack or certain social engineering, and then before you know it, the bad actors have access to your system. So, cybersecurity as part of people should be integrated in the organization's culture, which means cybersecurity is prioritized, cybersecurity is integrated, which means it's part of the everyday life of employees in the company or organization, and it should be supported by senior management. In any project, in any endeavor or activity, senior management support is critical. The success of an activity or a project is dependent on the support of senior management. Now, imagine if you receive an email about campaign, security awareness saying this, and that. Sometimes just, all right, here we go, another cybersecurity awareness campaign and so on. What's in it for me? Sometimes they just won't read it. But the thing is, if the CEO of the company or the owner emails something on cybersecurity, you know that people will read it. So that's something on how senior management can support. And from the perspective of, let's say, we are systems administrators, we are security engineers, and so on. If we see something, let's say something, and then hopefully get it across our managers who can then get it up to senior management in order to do some, let's say, organizational wide changes to address a certain cybersecurity issue or a glaring cybersecurity risk. And effective and continuous security education, awareness training done to the employees enables them to identify and evade attacks. Again, they are the first in line. They're the first ones to see social engineering attacks and so on. And so if you enable them with continuous security education and awareness training, they would know what to do and they would be able to evade these kinds of attacks, or more importantly, report it. So it's not something as part of enabling them, as part of training them. Guys, if you see something, say it. Don't just leave it. And then also us, the professionals, security resources, people skills to implement, operate, manage, and monitor security policies and systems is vital to the organization. After all, cybersecurity is not something that's just done by the people. There has to be technology as well to support it, and vice versa. That's why there's 3 of them. And that brings us to the next one, the processes. It's the key to implementing an effective strategy and architecture of cybersecurity. Processes basically define the roles, activities, documentations, and what systems, networks, and whatnot should be in place to mitigate cybersecurity risks. What roles, what functions should be there, and what activities should the roles and or the functions be doing in order to address or mitigate cybersecurity risks? It should be defined because one, for example, I am a small company and I just decided to outsource everything on a managed service provider. I don't need to have these kind of roles because it's already uploaded. So that's something that's defined in the process as part of documentation. And also it outlines who uses which tools and identify when to test and evaluate defenses, identify, categorize, and address security issues as part of the process. There has to be a document that says or outlines these people will use these tools, and then there should be a process which says every this, and that we evaluate our defenses. I think there was a question about how often should we be doing vulnerability assessments and penetration testings, and there are standards out there which says this should be done this frequently. There is not a single best practice or standard that's applicable to all organizations. It's actually dependent on the organizational risk appetite. Put it this way, I have a web application, and from time to time, every quarter, I do change in that. Now, from a perspective of the organization, I cannot really accept that I'm only seeing the vulnerabilities every quarter. I want to do it every month. That's too much, actually, on cybersecurity in the real world. But that's something that the organization wants, and therefore they can have it. Now, some will do it just once a year. But to boil it down to a more even or more general or more common practice, it's actually once or twice a year in terms of performing vulnerability assessments or testing and evaluating your defenses. And then, of course, the process should indicate that all kinds of attacks or risks should not be treated equally. So you should know about them and then categorize them, which needs more attention than the other, before you then address them. That's all part of the process that should be laid out by the organization or the organization board, or more specifically, by the governance. Governance leads the direction of the company. Management makes sure that that is implemented in compliance to the governance. So as part of the management They create these processes and so on. And then who are responsible? What's out there? What do we do with what we discover is out there? What are we going to use on what we discover that's out there with about different cybersecurity issues? And are some of the items that process in general cover and answer. And next is technology, which is probably the most common and the most emphasized pillar of cybersecurity. The goal of technology is to automate processes and policy implementations, making them smarter and more effective. The right combination of technology solutions should be used, integrated, optimized, and then ensure good security posture and avoid security gaps. The right combination of technology, and this is where it kind of gets what do you call this? This is where, you know, in the real world, what's happening is sometimes it's the vendors who dictate what we should have. If what happens is they recommend these technology solutions. Oh, you need this, you need this, you need this, and so on. The thing is, it should be the other way around. If you have people who are trained and who has the skills in place, and they have the proper process, and then policies are created, the organization understands cybersecurity, risk management, and so on. From there, they will be able to identify what they need and then translate it and then to technical requirements, to which what solutions out there will solve this requirement. It should be in that process, not the other way around. It should not be that the technology providers and so on will say, you need this, you need this, you need this. Maybe, but not really urgently or critically. I need that, but it's not on my pipeline. It's on year 3, probably. So I have to prioritize this first. That's kind of, and that's again, the right combination of technology. You don't just put in more and more technology and just get lost with a lot of things happening. How do I manage all of these now? And then the combination is meant to address threats on different environments and work cohesively as a complete security fabric covering the organization. Complete security fabric doesn't mean every single solution out there. It's a complete security fabric that's designed for the organization, which covers the organizational requirements, which takes advantage or only gets the solutions required to cover the organizational requirements, not to get everything out there and try everything out there. So that's technology. And here are some of the sample technologies we have on network security: firewalls, intrusion detection or prevention systems. These are basically network security devices that sit somewhere in the network, in the middle of the network, or strategically placed around, and they monitor the traffic, trying to detect which ones is legitimate, let it pass, which ones are containing malicious payload. All right, block this or notify the administrator about something's happening, something's going on. Firewalls, on the other hand, is mainly used to protect the perimeter. So you have your house, and then your fences, and the firewall is acting your fences. And there's also a concept on using firewalls internally on different segments of your network, wherein before a certain segment of your network is able to communicate with another segment inside your bigger perimeter, they have to pass to another firewall as well to ensure that all traffic inside is being monitored, or to make sure that only those who are allowed to communicate, segment 1 to segment 2, you are allowed to talk to each other only through this kind of protocol. The rest of the protocol is blocked. That's the job of the firewall. And then endpoint security, we have antivirus, the ones you use on your laptops, or if you use antivirus as well on your mobile devices, that's good. And then endpoint detection response goes even further, not just by detecting viruses or malwares, but it also checks on what are the currently running processes, what are activities happening on endpoint, and be able to work out if something is odd or not normal, because an antivirus basically will just check files. Is it malicious? Is it not? All right. But an EDR goes a step further by actually understanding what's happening, right? Application security, we have web application firewalls that are designed for web applications. Now, remember that example I gave you about Facebook login, where you can input scripts and codes to the input fields. A web application firewall is one of those devices that are capable of understanding what's happening on those input fields. A firewall, a normal firewall, cannot, because it's designed for the network, and the firewall, or the WAF, is designed for web applications. Database security, secure coding, and then we have encryptions, backups, and data leak prevention for data security. Data leak prevention is you can define on the DLPs where my company only uses Word. We're not really using, let's say, PDF. This is weird, but that's just an example. So what I'll do is, I don't want PDFs in my company, or everything, or I think this is a better example. Once it is PDF in my company, anything PDF means it's critical. So what I'll do is I'll define on the data leak prevention that anything that's PDF should not leave my premises. It all should remain in here. So the data leak prevention prevents that from happening. Then for access security, multi-factor authentication, and privilege account management, we'll be discussing this later. And then security operations. Of course, somebody has to be monitoring whatever is happening as these devices are operating, like analysis of logs and detecting attacks. And then this is a concept of cybersecurity in terms of technology, where it's called defense in depth. Or in another easier or in more basic is layered security, wherein I have mission critical assets. Before I can gain access, I have to pass through the perimeter, be allowed on the network security, endpoint, application security, data security, before I can even get access to that. If the perimeter fails, there's still the network, there's still the endpoint and application security, making the life of the hacker more difficult before they can get to your mission critical assets. Right, let's go through the cybersecurity protections. These are basics, some of best practices that you might have encountered, or something that hopefully you might learn new things on this session. But in the context of people, we start with awareness. We start with trainings. It starts with people, where we help them understand the importance of cybersecurity, and we teach them. How do you identify potential threats? How do you respond to them? Which ones do you report, and which ones is just for, just delete it and forget it. And also, it provides the employees with knowledge and skills needed to recognize, report, and prevent security incidents. Aside from that, if you empower your employees, you provide security awareness trainings, not only are you benefiting as an organization, but you're also helping them in their personal lives, because we live in a world where half probably of our life is digital. It's out there. So in their own personal lives, whatever they learn in the cybersecurity awareness trainings we provide as an organization is something that they can also apply on their everyday lives. Okay? And then framework adoption. This is the job of security governance, and this covers the process portion of the cybersecurity pillar. Framework such as the NIST CSF, or the National Institute of Standards and Technology Cybersecurity Framework, or CSF, are sets of documents describing guidelines, standards, best practices designed for cybersecurity risk management. Notice risk management. What is risk management? We either mitigate, we either avoid, we either transfer, or we accept. Okay, so it's all about risk management. The best practices, standards are designed so that companies and organizations would be able to better manage their risk. Not eliminate, not avoid completely or not ensure or not go after the idea of we wanted to be established as a company that's not going to be breached. We're strong like that. No, it doesn't happen in there. And to that, I also saw a question on the Q&A box about best practices and so on. When, like, for example, when it's the how often do you do VAPTs and whatnot? These frameworks will be recommending those as well, or recommending how you should approach, like, for example, yeah, let's answer that question. How often should you do a vulnerability assessment and penetration testing? There's no standard in the industry that you should do this twice a year, once a year, etc., and so on. There are recommendations based on what you have. But the idea of a framework is to, okay, you want to know, I'll give you the guidelines into understanding your own system, understanding your own risks. And so you'd be able to work out how many times you want to do it per year based on your risk appetite. That's the purpose of a cybersecurity framework. The most common one is the NIST CSF. We also have ISO. But if you want a more complete and exhaustive list of what is the standards, what are the best practices, you might want to visit NIST Special Publication 800-53. This is a bit of a warning though. This is quite exhaustive, but because there's a lot, there's probably 20 categories, each with about hundreds of recommendations each, hundreds of recommended items per category or something. But the idea is you don't have to memorize all of them. You should just get yourself familiar. And if you wanted to search on something specific, you could go ahead and browse and you might find it there. So that's NIST 800-53. And again, the goal is to identify areas most at risk for cybersecurity breaches and reduce the organization's exposure to attack. A cybersecurity framework will guide the organization as well on, let's say, how do you go about with which ones you should protect first over the other. Like you should classify your data first. Which data is critical to me? Where are they stored? Where are they being processed? Where are they being created? And then from there, I could work out, all right, these systems where my critical data resides should be on top of my list, and so on. And how do you classify data, and so on and so forth, are all contained on a cybersecurity framework, which is to be an organization's governance should adopt one as a direction to follow when it comes to cybersecurity. Because even in life, we don't have your own direction and things you wanted to do, goals and whatnot. It's difficult. Same with cybersecurity. Anyway, let's go through another set of cybersecurity protection, which is segmentation and traffic filtering. So we have computers, servers, applications, mobile devices, whatever they are, they all connect and communicate to each other via a network. And if a network is connected yet to another network and another network and another network and more networks communicating with each other, ladies and gentlemen, you have the internet. That's how it's, and that's how it was born. So the network is composed of physical, logical connections along with devices that facilitate for these communications to happen. And the best practice is you don't put everything on a huge network and allow them to communicate with each other through that huge network. It's just going to be a complete mess and it will have impact on performance. And if everybody can see everybody, which means if one gets infected or compromised, it's easy to compromise the others because you just reside on the same network. Pretty much like what we did back in the pandemic. We isolate each other so we won't infect each other. It's pretty much the same, or it's exactly the same with network security. You break it down to small segments. Which networks are allowed to communicate with which networks? They're the ones that you allow. The rest you deny as part of cybersecurity best practices. And then those who are allowed to communicate, say network 1 and then network 2, Say here's network 1, we have network 2, and we have here network 3. Network 3 can communicate with 1, but not with 2. And if they're allowed to communicate, you should filter them down further. Like, for example, network 1 and network 2 is allowed only on video conferencing. And network 1 and network 3 is only allowed on file sharing. So what happens is, you don't allow network 1 and 3 to do video streaming, and you don't allow network 1 and 2 to share files with each other. As a best practice and part of protecting your network infrastructure, segment them down, break them into smaller chunks, and then ensure that only the things that are allowed to be exchanged, to be communicated between the networks are the only ones that are allowed. The rest is denied. There is a concept of firewalling called the implicit deny, where in a firewall, if you do not allow any communication to happen, everything is blocked. Everything is not allowed unless you specifically identify which ones you want it to happen. And then we have data security in terms of encryption. Encryption is the process by which a message is converted into something that cannot be understood except by those who has the decryption key to reverse this process. Okay, so we have here a certain message called, somebody said hello. So there is a key plus the encryption algorithm. So put the key and the message into this encryption algorithm, and it spits out this encrypted ciphertext. Once, this one, by the way, is called plain text. So if a message is readable before any encryption performed, it's called a plain text. Once it has been encrypted, it's called a ciphertext. So the ciphertext is unintelligible or incomprehensible for those who doesn't have the key. And that's kind of how HTTPS works, VPNs, that's how they work. Once it's now a ciphertext, you are more confident that it's fine. It could probably land even on the wrong hands because they won't be able to make use of it. They don't have a key. So what they have is something encrypted that they don't have any use of unless they have the key. So they have to steal the key in order to decrypt it and read the message. And then there goes the mathematics of encryption in the same way that the ransomware works. Once it's encrypted, if I want to break this by brute force, I would need a huge computing power and a lot of time, which is not feasible on one lifetime. You will have already passed away before the decryption process happens. So it's easier to actually steal the key. So in the same way as ransomware, once your files are encrypted, it's just, you need the key. Basically, you're paying for the ransom for them to give you the key to decrypt your files. But if you're going to try and decrypt it on your own, good luck. Your next generations probably will be the ones to decrypt that file. And then, so we have a ciphertext already. In the most basic way of encryption, the same key that was used to encrypt will be the same key that will be used to decrypt, turning it back to the original plain text it once was. So the idea is the sender and the receiver would have already agreed on the same key that we'll be using, and then the sender encrypts and then transfers it even on an unsecure medium. People can see, people can get a copy, and then a copy lands on the receiver and uses the same key to decrypt and then sees the message hello. That is called symmetric encryption. It's also on the cybersecurity, the ECC training. It will be discussed in there. And then there's another one called asymmetric, where the sender and the receiver has their own set of public and private keys. That's more complicated, but it's actually the most common implementation of encryption. If you access your bank account, if you access online shopping, Facebook, and so on, your laptop, your device, your mobile phone, your computer generates its own public and private key pair, and then the application you're trying to access, whatever it is, has its own public and private keeper as well. And that works together to ensure that whatever you send and receive with each other is encrypted. And encryption is used to protect data confidentiality. Why and how? Even if that encrypted message lands on the wrong hands, it's still not accessible for them. So you would have prevented unauthorized access to that because they don't have the key. So encryption can protect the data while it is at rest, stored in a database, media, USB, hard disk, flash drive in your computer, or while it is in transit, traversing through unsecured networks. And as part of data security, we have backups. How important is a backup? Again, in the case of ransomware, if you do not have a backup, you're done. So regular backups, especially on critical systems. And backups can include snapshots, files, configurations, and logs. There was a question in the Q&A box where if ransomware encrypts logs as well, they can technically, but most of the time they target files because those are the most valuable to an organization. But some ransomwares, they can also encrypt logs and other files that are, say for example, it's going to encrypt configuration files, system images, and so on. That is something that ransomwares can also encrypt. And then should be stored securely as they contain critical, sensitive, or confidential information. Critical system containing company secrets, organizational files, and so on. You made a backup. Basically, what you did was a duplicate of this one. So if you're protecting this one, you should equally protect your backup as well. Otherwise, if this gets stolen, well, that's confidential. That's a replica of what you've backed up. And by the way, ransomwares also target backups. They know that if you restore backup, they're done. So what they do is target after your files and then search for backups and then encrypt them as well. So the best practice for backups is having multiple and stored in different locations. That's a more complex discussion, and I think the ECC will also be discussing a bit more. And then here's one thing that companies or organizations don't typically do. It's testing regularly their backups, test restoration to ensure that they are working in the event of an incident. Why? You have complete backups of many things, of your assets, and so on and so forth. Ransomware comes, you try and restore, and you just realize you've been doing backups the wrong way and it wouldn't restore the way you wanted it or expecting it to. And you're done. You have a backup, but it doesn't work because it's done in the wrong way, or it's missing some files, it's missing this, and that, or you thought it was a complete backup. Apparently it's only this and that. So you have to have as part of the process, regular testing of backups to ensure that in the event of an incident, we restore a backup and it actually works. That's a best practice in data security backups. And then we have the concept of authentication, authorization, and accounting. This is used for logins. Again, the authentication is the process of verifying if a user is allowed to access the organization's systems or resources. If not, automatically blocked, but if allowed, then you go to the next phase, which is authorization. Right, you've been given access up to what extent of capabilities will be given to you. So I gave you access to the company, you're an employee, you work on the HR department, good. So what are you authorized? What are you allowed to do inside? You have access, fine, but what systems in the HR department are you allowed to have activities on? Are you allowed to do things, add files, modify, and so on? Authorization determines the extent of capabilities an authenticated user can perform with the provided access. And this is something that should be defined in the process, in the policies. If you are on this position, you are doing this role, you should have access to this and then only be able to do this with that access. And then lastly, we have accounting, which is logging the activities and information about activities performed by the user. And this is where it supports the concept of non-repudiation. If there are proper logs indicating the activities done by the user, so here's the user and we have the activities tied up to that specific user or identity, then there is strong evidence if something happens, you know from the logs that this user has done this, and then they cannot say no because the logs indicate so. Accounting should indicate that activities are logged, and then the logs are also stored somewhere that is not accessible for the user to modify. Because if, all right, I gained access, I did malicious things, but I know how to delete the logs, so I can repudiate all this. No. Best practice of cybersecurity is you have to store logs separately, and it should also be protected. And in case of an incident, that's one thing that you will be going back to. And then I want to stress and spend a bit more time on this user and privilege account management. Let's define the two accounts first. We have one that are regular accounts. These are used by employees to access systems, services that are available to them, such as email, internal applications, everything they need to do their day-to-day work. So that's user account. And then we have privileged accounts. This is the target of, this is one of the things that a rootkit will do, is establish a privileged account for itself. Why? Because privileged accounts are used by system administrators to manage the systems used by employees. When you say manage, it includes performing changes, optimizing, even shutting it down, improving, changing the look, adding, deleting users, adding, deleting administrators, changing the traffic, deleting, adding files, enabling, disabling features, everything you could possibly think of. It's like if you have a phone, everything that you can do on your phone, you can do because you are a privileged account on your phone. The same applies if you are a privileged account of Microsoft Office 365 for your company, you can delete, add email address, and so on and so forth. That's why rootkits want this, because they can now do all sorts of things. When rootkit has created its own account in there and then created a backdoor for the attackers to come in another time, then the attacker has a foothold that it can use to then move to other systems that it can see and also maintain. Why both accounts have access to organization resources, both are targeted by attackers to gain unauthorized access, especially the privileged accounts. And as I've said during social engineering slide, that this is one of the targets, or most of the time, the main targets of social engineering and hackers who do social engineering. Because it's easier for them to fool you into giving me your username and password than go through all the bother of trying this and this and that, finding weaknesses, exploiting weaknesses, different codes and scripts and so on, just to get access to your system. But if someone who has access and I manage to fool them, immediately I gain access to the system easier, spares me a lot of time. So how do we protect user and privileged account? Number one, monitor and protect accounts throughout its entire lifespan. So a new employee comes into the company, an account was created for that employee, the employee uses the account, the employee gets promoted or transfers to another department, which means there's modification on that account on which systems the employee used to be able to access and which systems the employee can now access. And eventually that, if the employee retires or resigns, that account should be deleted. Now, from the moment an account was created to the moment it was deleted, there should be a proper management process for it. So once the account is created, by default, a new created account should have absolutely zero access. That's the best practice. And then you slowly give it access that it's allowed. So the more you give it, the more access it has. And the problem with having no account management is, and this happens in the real world, where an employee used to be HR and then has transferred, say, to IT department, but his access as HR employee, former HR employee, was not removed. So what happened was he gained another access to the IT, but still has access to HR, which means if an attacker manages to compromise that account has access to HR and has access to IT. It's a bit of a bonus for the attacker this time. Because I hacked an account, I thought I could have access to IT. Oh, I have access to HR as well. So that's part of management. How do you go about managing the different capabilities of each account, whether user or privileges, throughout its entire lifespan? A best practice is to do regular review of the valid accounts and then ensure that the correct access and privilege is assigned. You'll discover someone who has access to this. That's for testing. He's done that 5 years ago. No, remove that access already. He doesn't need that. Or you find accounts which has, hold on, I think this account was from a former employee. He's no longer connected to the company. Why is it still there? This should be disabled. This should be deleted. So, and then all invalid, this will be now invalid because he's no longer a member of the company, should be either disabled or deleted. And those who have excessive privileges, they will be trimmed down to the privileges and allowed access that they should only have. That should follow the guidance from these two concepts called need to know and least privilege. The need to know says that only those systems or resources that the account has legitimate or justified reason to have access will be provided. I need to know about this. I need to have access with this on this server, on this network. I have justified and legitimate reasons to access this, therefore I should be allowed. If you do not have any justified or legitimate reason to access another server, you should not be allowed. So, need to know. Only those that you need to access should be provided to you, nothing else. If you're HR if you're HR, for example, you don't even need to access the entirety of all HR resources. If you're, let's say, compensation and benefits, you probably just need to access that subset of the entire HR. You only need to know that. It doesn't mean because you're HR, you also need to know the payroll and so on. So that's need to know. Only what is required of you. And then least privilege, you have access to compensation benefit systems, whatever is that, no idea. I'm just setting examples, just sharing examples here. Only the bare minimum capabilities to completely perform your task in that system will be provided to you. So you do not have any other capability in that apart from what you need. Bare minimum. So that's why you might have encountered, say, for example, there are approval processes wherein you do that, and then on the same system, a higher, let's say your supervisor has to go to the system and approve it before it gets up and so on, because your privilege is just to do this. The supervisor's privilege is just to do this. The least amount of privilege for the supervisor to do their job, and for you to do your job. So again, going back, need to know and least privilege are your guiding concepts when it comes to reviewing valid accounts to ensure that access and correct privileges are assigned, nothing more. And then how do we protect privileged accounts in terms of usage? So number one, strong passwords must be used. We're all familiar with this. The best practice is to follow your organization's policies regarding this. I think the minimum now is 14 characters long with combination, of course, uppercase, lowercase, and special characters, or you can do passphrases. But sometimes passphrases may be very, very long. Again, based on your organization's needs, some very long passphrases might cause lag or issues with the server accepting it. So it depends upon the systems, but at the very least, comply to your organization's password policies. Strong passwords, and then that's also one of the reasons. Has anybody wondered why passwords expire? You might find yourself, oh God, here we go again. I need to change my password. It's just been a month and so on. The reason for that is that, one, your passwords could have been stolen without you knowing. And number two, even if there happens to be a really powerful computer and you have 14-character passwords, and the powerful computer could break it in 1 month, by the time the computer has broken it, you would have already changed it. So that's why passwords expire. And there are also best practices on password where you should not be able to reuse the last 5 of your passwords. The system should prevent you from using your name, your birthday, and so on as a password and whatnot. As part of strong passwords policy and technology involved, again, the password expiry, and then 14 characters and so on. And then, at the minimum, employ two-factor authentication. And I think we're pretty much all familiar with this. The importance of having two-factor authentication. You have a password, and then there's a one-time PIN that you can only use for one time to support that password. If your password gets stolen and they try and log into your account, they would have the one-time password, which means your account remains safe from hacking. But if your password gets compromised, you should, even if the OTP protects you, you should change your password immediately. And as part of social engineering, that's why we always keep getting reminders, never, ever, ever to give your one-time password away. It should be you who received the one-time PIN. It should be you who's going to use it and input that OTP into the system. There should be no third party doing that for you. You should never give away your one-time password. Okay. Now, there are different types of multi-factor authentications. It starts with something you know, in this case, a password or a PIN. It's something you already know. You've set this. And then something you have. Could be an RFID card, one-time PIN, some tokens and so on. It's something that you easily take out or something that you use. You don't know it because you don't know what exactly, like one-time PIN. You don't know what your one-time PIN is going to be. But once it arrives, it's now something you have. And then something you are as a human being, biometrics. We have fingerprint, iris scan, retina, hand geometry, voice and facial recognitions, and so on. So the best practice is to use at least 2 of these, but not the same. There's no point in having 2 passwords or 2 PINs. They can both be stolen and used together or in consecutive to access your account. So the idea is to use different 2, or you could use all 3 of them. But the more secure one is if you use biometrics. Passwords can be stolen. One-time PINs can still be stolen, although difficult. But your fingerprint is even more difficult to steal. The world is slowly moving passwordless. So if you are using biometrics to log into your phone, thank you. You are making the world one human more secure. So there. Two-factor authentication, use any of these, but not the same factor. And in terms of password management, there are also password managers out there. There are some free password managers. There are some paid password managers, because in our lives right now, digital lives, we have lots and lots of accounts and we manage lots and lots of passwords. And as human beings, we're not optimized really for this. So a best practice is to offload that to something whose only job is to manage passwords and protect it. So there are password managers, password vaults. It may be a bit on the side of, hold on a minute, I'm putting all my passwords in one vault. which means if that vault gets compromised, all my passwords are gone. Well, it is true, but the benefits of having a password vault protected by a secure master password and then multi-factor authentication, could be any 2 or 3 of these, the benefit of that outweighs the risk of you managing your own passwords, because again, as humans, we're not really optimized for this one. Chances are we're just writing our passwords somewhere, using the same passwords repeatedly on different accounts, or just like in social engineering, is a name of my dog and the year that I graduated in school, which is something that's easy to figure. So the benefits of having a password manager to manage all your password outweighs the risks of it being compromised, because its only job is to protect your passwords. But still, there are risks, and it's in the best practice of cybersecurity. It's more secure to do that, but it all boils down to the organization or you as an individual, where no, that risk I cannot accept. I would rather manage my own password and take the risk and take that risk instead. So again, it all boils down to you, but the idea of using a password manager is something that's recommended. So you have a vault, it's protected by a master password and then multi-factor authentication. And then as best practice, you should also be regularly replacing your passwords and then updating it every month or 2. Okay. Then we have vulnerability assessments and penetration testing. Now, this is divided into 2. We have VA, which is all about identifying and quantifying and prioritizing vulnerabilities or weaknesses of a system. That example on logging in and putting codes and scripts into the field where it asks username and password and you input scripts. The system, if it accepts that and obeys those scripts, that is a vulnerable system. It is weak. Shouldn't be doing that. So that's an identified vulnerability. Now, penetration testing aims to simulate a cyber attack against a target system to exploit these identified vulnerabilities. Oh, so I have now identified that this web application answers to scripts in an attack called cross-site scripting, for example. I am going to exploit this, dig in deeper, try and do more, and see how deep can I go? How much damage can I actually inflict? Is this at some point going to stop me? That after a certain cycles or different issues of commands, there was a security software or security device that realized, hold on a minute, somebody's issuing scripts, stop this, stop this. That's it, done. So at least during penetration testing, it was realized I can only go up to that. Congratulations, your security device worked, but it's kind of late in the game. You should have acted early. Another thing is discovering that, oh, hold on a minute. After this first layer of the software or the application hesitating to obey my script commands, it's a freeway inside. I can now access the database. I now have access to the network and so on. That's something that will be discovered in the penetration testing. Simulating an attack to the target system and determine the extent of potential damage. The goal of VAPT is to test the system from the perspective of an attacker, then identify and understand the system weaknesses. Not just identify, but have a good knowledge and understanding about what the system weaknesses are, what its risk to the organization is, the damage it will cause, and what sort of avenues it's going to provide to the attacker to gain deeper access to our systems. And with the goal of course, you need to mitigate them. You need to do something about them. Or in some cases, all right, fine, it's just staging. So let's accept that risk. Let's not fix that. That could happen as well, but never on live environment. And system updates and patches. We have providers, We have vendors and developers of software applications and devices often regularly releasing updates and patches to enhance performance or fix bugs, issues, including system weaknesses. This is a never-ending cycle. The world of cybersecurity is a never-ending world. The technology enhancements also never end. Today, tomorrow, the next few weeks, new things, new stuff just come. And then we, the people, are onto it. We adapt to these. And then before we know it, we are using a device or a software, an application that is causing us harm or has the potential to cause harm to us or to the organization and so on. And so if a developer or a manufacturer or a vendor sells, or if you develop your own application, for example, chances are as it's being used, a lot of things get discovered about it. If you develop a software, you cannot predict that once it's been released to your customers or to whatever use it is meant to be deployed on, you cannot predict what sort of use cases, what sort of different combination of different things that's possible to happen on your software, like misuse, integration with another software, or bugs that will come around if you do certain things to it. And so as it is being used, a lot of things get discovered about it. And those discoveries need to be reported to vendors so they can fix it and then patch, or they can release a patch or a fix to it, and then that fix gets applied. And then sometimes that fix that's supposed to fix another problem causes yet another problem. Or if not another problem, you fixed or patched a certain weakness, but it developed another weakness from that effort of doing so, from that software or hot fix or piece of code that was applied to that specific software. So that's why it's really never-ending cycle. That's why when a certain device or software gets out of support, the organization should already be flagging this, because whatever happens to this, I cannot fix it. There's no more fix that's coming. So I need to flag this one. It's now end of support. I should be upgrading to the new one where it's still continuously being supported and patched. Are you guys familiar with Patch Tuesday? Microsoft releases security updates every second Tuesday of the month. Notice it if you're updating, which I do hope you are updating your operating systems. Because back in Windows XP, Windows 7, I am guilty to be one of those people who disable Windows updates because it bogs down the computer, it's slow to update, and then after the update, just hold on, something has changed, it doesn't, it's now slow and so on. So I honestly disable. But now working in the cybersecurity field, I do understand the importance of these updates. And if you notice, there really isn't a way now to disable updates. In Windows 10, I'm not aware if there is any, but I don't think, or from what I know, there isn't a way to disable Windows updates. You're gonna get it every second Tuesday of the month. And it's just a matter of, and even if I've encountered this, and much to my annoyance, what happened was, right, so there was an update already downloaded, ready to install, but I'm busy. I'm not going to install it, and then left my computer on standby. When I came back, it decided to reboot and install. It's like, yeah, it does this on its own in the name of cybersecurity and also fixing issues and bugs. Discovering new threats, vulnerabilities, and developing update patches, a never-ending cycle. So you must be regularly updating your devices to the latest patches to ensure resilience and even immunity to cyber attacks, including your web browsers. So if you're not aware, your web browsers are getting updates as well. I hope your web browsers are updated. This is the interface we use to navigate the internet and encounter all sorts of different things out there. It's the vehicle that we use to navigate that world. So if we encounter a malicious website, they can sometimes run malicious scripts. And if our web browser is updated from the web browsers, let's say Microsoft Edge or Mozilla Firefox, on their end, they're also doing threat hunting. What threats are out there that could potentially affect Microsoft Edge or Mozilla Firefox? Once they've discovered it, they update it, they do a fix, a patch, and then update it to Microsoft Edge or Chrome or Mozilla Firefox, so that when you browse the internet and you've encountered that threat, your browser is now immune to it or it's capable of blocking it. So that's how important it is that your browsers are also updated, not only on your computers, on your Windows 10 laptops, workstations, or whatnot, but also on your phones. We have constant updates. We receive constant updates from whoever the manufacturer or the provider or whatever the brand of our phone is, and along with the application updates. So you go to Play Store, App Store, there are constant updates there. Why? Because of that purpose. And endpoint protection. So our anti-malware software or when you say malware, again, it's a generic term for lots and lots of different malicious software, should be installed on all applicable computers, devices, and workstations. It should cover as much as it can, although there may be some strong justifications on why you would not install anti-malware software on some devices. For example, if you have a critical device and installing an anti-malware bogs it down in such a way that it's causing outages and so on, or it's slow to use. Some organizations may accept the risk of not installing it, not installing an antivirus or an anti-malware to it, and then compensate it with, let's say, all right, you can't install an anti-malware on this, let's put it behind the security device, so at least anything that comes in and out of it is monitored. But as long as it is applicable, it must be installed. And it should be running a real-time scan of all the files, activities, and running processes, not just if something gets copied and they check it. It should be constantly checked. And then kept updated with malware signatures on a daily basis. The same with the idea of threat hunting. Whoever the provider is of your anti-malware has a research group that's trying to find out what are the viruses, what are the malwares, Trojans, keyloggers that are out there. And so we create a signature for this, update it to our anti-malware users so that when they encounter, they know how to recognize this particular type of malware and then be able to block it. Otherwise, in its most basic form, if an anti-malware file or comes across a certain processes that it doesn't recognize because it doesn't have a signature, an updated malware signature for it, he's going to treat it, it's going to treat it as, oh, it's fine, it's clear, you're not malicious. Until there's such time, hold on a minute, I received the update, you're malicious, no, you're coming out, so on. There's also a saying that if you have an anti-malware that isn't updated, it's basically almost the same as not having any anti-malware at all. And same with the malware signatures, you should be updating it with the latest version of the software and its engines, because it's constantly being optimized. And there's also what's called a heuristic engine in an anti-malware, where even though it hasn't been updated with the latest signature of a certain malware, the engine in itself is capable of realizing or analyzing certain behaviors or certain files based on certain dependencies or certain configurations and so on, and make a decision like, hold on, this is suspicious. This kind of file, DOCX file or a docx file, a Word document, shouldn't really be trying to access this part of the operating system. So from that, I don't know what kind of malware you are, but that behavior is suspicious, and my heuristic engine is saying so that should not happen, and I take action to block it. And that heuristic engine keeps being optimized, enhanced, and so on. That's why not only with the malware signatures, you should also keep your engines, antivirus, anti-malware engines updated. And lastly, you should schedule to perform a full scan on a regular basis as part, because sometimes, well, the anti-malware can only do so much. Sometimes there are ways where we temporarily disable them because it keeps popping up when we're playing, and then somebody plugs in the USB and so on. That wasn't discovered until there was a full scan that was performed. Okay. And as part of cybersecurity protections is to also monitor and respond to incidents. Cyber-aware employees, again, will be able to detect and report these incidents because they have been trained being the front line of the organization. And then cyber-skilled employees, that's where we are, should keep a watchful eye on the network and the systems and respond to incidents. Logs and system reports should be reviewed because the devices, the network, the software, the websites, and so on, they have capabilities to record what's happening on them and their own status as well. And they generate, sometimes they even generate report on a regular basis on their own. But the thing is someone really looking at this? And that's where the importance of monitoring comes into play, because we don't just configure and deploy them and leave them expecting they're doing their job. They are doing their job, but you are not, because you're not looking at them. You're not checking what they're doing, what's happening on them. And on an average, it takes a lot of time to discover a cybersecurity incident happening, because from the perspective of an attacker, their idea is to remain hidden. And remaining hidden means invisible, and they're not really causing anything on your network. Or if they are, just the bare minimum, like, for example, they are stealing files. They won't do it on a huge, one big bulk of transfer that will consume your bandwidth. They are willing to stay there for the next how many months, years, bit by bit, slowly downloading things. And if that's happening, how would you know that something like that really is happening if you don't check and analyze the logs or the system reports? Respond to alarms or employee reports, of course, and take action on it. And then based on the processes on how you should be responding to alarms and employee reports, you should be following that. This is the job of incident responders. I have actually had an experience before. It was in, I'm not gonna say what company, but it was a big company, right? So there was a subsidiary who reported that their internet connection has gone down and they haven't got any backups. So what this administrator did was, on his own, made changes to the firewall, the main firewall of the company. And what happened was the entire company's internet connection went down for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. That's a big outage. The moral of the story is, when you respond to alarms and employee reports, there should be a process on how you should do it. That's the importance of the process part. You have the people trained, following a certain process and how you should respond to these kinds of incidents. So responding to alarms and employee reports is part of monitoring your infrastructure, and then following a certain process. To reiterate that. Incident response include isolation, preservation of evidence, proper documentation, investigation, implementing corrections, and restorations of services and functionality. And if things really aren't happening, I mean, there are times that we're not really getting as much alarms. There are seasons when it happens. We should continuously check our system and optimize, ensuring that they are performing at their best capabilities, and also continuously monitoring and continuously optimizing security systems make you more aware and knowledgeable on what is normal on your network. So it's making you understand more that this is the normal. If we don't have attacks, this is what we're getting. If we have attacks, this is how the systems are responding. And so with better understanding of what the baseline is, of what the normal is, if something happens, you would be able to respond more efficiently to it. You would be able to work out which is a false positive, meaning it's a false detection that something is, that an attack is happening, and which ones are the true, that these are true, genuine attacks that are happening. But probably we would have missed out. So that's on the monitor and respond to incident. And now let's go on a bit about careers on cybersecurity. So I hope from the whole slide, you're picking up new things. We started with the definition, and then we went through knowing the enemies, and then we went through the core of cybersecurity, and then we went through what protections we can put in place, and now what careers are available for you in the world or the universe of cybersecurity. I have discussed this a bit in the previous slide on the universe that I presented, but let's go on a bit more detail about them. So we have analysts, and this is not an exhaustive list, by the way, just to give you an overview of what's out there. And again, some organizations will say security analysts should be designing a network for me, even if a security analyst should be identifying and fixing issues and so on. But it's up to them. But again, to give you an idea, analysts typically analyzes, hence the job name, use analytical abilities to identify and fix any issues in a company's security programs. When you say programs, that doesn't necessarily mean a software program, but it's also a program that's designed to improve employee capabilities or awareness training programs and so on and so forth. And then also the systems. They provide recommendations to help improve the organization's security system. Okay, so a security analyst may do sometimes some vulnerability assessments, can do some risk assessments and so on. Again, depending on the organizations, but basically analyzing the big picture of things or a certain system or a certain network or a certain area of the infrastructure, and then providing recommendations to improve them. Next, we have an engineer and architect when it comes to, and again, this could be, you'll see these on the field, cybersecurity engineer, cybersecurity architect, information security engineer, information security architect, and so on. It's they may not be exactly the same, but they're pretty much similar on the job roles. Design and implement and tune effective combination of network and data controls to balance prevention, detection, and response. This is about, I have an infrastructure to protect. I have to design it in such a way that the data that's critical is isolated and protected. Those that needs to be accessed outside is easily accessible with their proper protections. And if something happens to this, it's easily accessible by this. I have a dedicated network just to manage my equipment. I can access the equipment from the outside and so on. These kinds of things are the job of a cybersecurity engineer or architect. How do you design the entire infrastructure? And then the administrator comes into play, ensuring that proper maintenance and operation and configuration of security systems are being done. So once it's been designed by a security engineer or an architect, it's now handed over to the operations, where the security administrator is part of those who are. All right, operations has detected that you're missing these kinds of alarms and so on, or according to operations, it's been not really efficient because we see bottlenecks and so on. And so the engineer, an architect goes like, all right, let me change this. Let's do this instead. I'll route this traffic here and this secure, and then critical traffic or critical data access should be passing through this direction, and so on and so forth. And then, all right, security administrator, I've designed it, you implement it. You do the changes to configuration and so on. That exists. And then the consultant, which identify and create solutions, analyze an organization or client security measures, study possible security breaches, and oversee the implementation of security solutions. So the consultant kind of spans across identifying and creating not necessarily security solutions in terms of technology, but solving problems or recommending solutions to problems, which could be, all right, to solve this particular problem, your people should do this. To solve this particular problem, you should do these changes on the network, route this traffic here and so on. Or to solve this particular problem, you should have a process that says this, so they could all follow that process. So, and then also do some reviews on the current security measures of the organization from a perspective of people, process, and technology. And of course, we have the incident responder or handler, which investigates, analyzes, and responds to cyber incidents within the network environment. The engineer has designed it. The administrator ensures it's operating in an optimized manner. It's being maintained. And then if something happens, a system reported this kind of attack happening, it's the job of the incident handler or incident responder to jump into the action and have a look at it. Because what the security analyst or whoever discovers it in the organization is going to do is just report it. And then it's the job of this incident responder handler to follow the process and procedures of investigating and handling the incidents, and then analyze it, and then fix it or mitigate it. So there's lots of different process. In the event of a cyber, let's say a server getting compromised by a ransomware, there are some playbooks, for example, or certain attack. There are playbooks to follow on how to respond to certain incidents, which the incident handler or responder should be very knowledgeable on how to follow these to make sure that proper log extraction or preservation of evidence and so on happens in compliance to the company policies or the playbook. Okay. And then we have the threat hunter or the threat analyst, which I have, as I have shared. Oh, sorry. Hold on. As I've shared, is there to research and go out into the world, into the wild, discover what are the possible threats that my organization might encounter in the future. And then I will do something about it. It may include code rules for triggering alerts in monitoring tools used by the company. It's like giving the monitoring tools a sort of signature or an update, or configuring them to recognize these threats that are out there. And threat hunters or analysts use threat intelligence, information sharing, and it's quite an interesting job, actually. If you are really into the technical nitty-gritties, this might be a job for you. But if you want to be a hacker, an ethical hacker, then a penetration testing job is probably the job that's for you. I saw a question a while ago about the different hacker hats. We have the white, the gray, and the black. A penetration tester is a white hat hacker, which means they use their hacking skills in order to conduct security tests on web applications, networks, and so on, various computer systems, intending to break in and identify vulnerabilities. That's the whole point of ethical hacking or being a penetration tester. A black hat hacker is the opposite of a white hat, wherein they are actually a threat actor. They do hacking for bad purposes. And then there's the gray, which is the confused one. I don't know. Do I want to stay black? Or do I want to stay gray? Or do I want to stay in both worlds? Wherein on my normal job, every day I do white hat hacking for my company. But when the sun sets down, I put on my hoodie and then go to my basement and do sorts of things. That's a gray hat hacker. The difference is a white hat hacker has consent and legal documents to do penetration testing. A black hat, even though the intent was for good, as long as it is done without proper consent or legal documents, it's still unethical. Right? And the gray, if you go to the gray, you're in the middle, you're set in the middle on your day-to-day job, yeah, that's legal, whatever you're doing there in being a white hat. But when you go to the black side, please be informed that that might have higher consequences. And forensic investigator retrieve information from computers and other digital devices to discover how an unauthorized person access a system or gather evidences for legal purposes. This is actually one of the job of a forensic investigator. There's what's called a chain of custody, wherein an evidence preserved and then handed over to different people, different departments, or whoever needs to have a hand on it, should have a proper chain of custody document, wherein there are proper handovers, it's signed, et cetera, and so forth. And the chain of custody, being a chain, must never be broken, must never be cut. Otherwise, if somewhere in the middle, you would have taken this measure already to preserve that evidence, but the chain got broken somewhere in them, the whole evidence might not be, it's no longer acceptable in a court of law, which means the only thing you can do now is, well, figure out what happened, but you can't really point a solid evidence towards your suspect because the chain of custody has been cut. The idea is the suspect might say that if the chain of custody has been broken, somebody's probably framing me up, that somebody in the middle of that investigation is planted somewhere in there to accuse me. But if the chain of custody is not broken, then it's the strong evidence towards whoever the suspect is. And then we have the application security specialist, which ensures the code, scripts, and programming of current applications and development of new ones are compliant to coding best practices to maintain overall security posture of applications. Now, here's the thing. If you are developing an application, a web application, a software, or whatever it is, the idea is on its own, it should already be secure. It should already be able to stand up against a lot of attacks. And then you protect it with another layer of security. Could be a firewall, could be intrusion detection, could be a technology, process, and then people. But the job of an application security specialist is that whatever we output as an application security specialist should be in itself be able to stand against some attacks, should be robust and resilient already, able to recognize that, hold on a minute, you're putting in scripts. No. That's not accepted. I'm going to reject that. It's actually called input validation. Those kinds of things, which are something like, for example, if I am expecting a name, so I have a field that expects a name, you can already filter out in your coding that the name field will not be accepting numbers. That's one. Or special characters like sharp, @ sign, or so on. It's just going to be probably a dot and some alphabetical characters. So in that way, you would already have eliminated that field. If an attacker tries to input scripts on that, automatically, hold on a minute, that's a special character. I'm not allowed. You're not allowed to input that. So reject. That's part. That's one of those things that are applied in secure coding. So if you are into programming, if you are into coding, this might be a job for you. And then we have the security auditor, assesses an organization's process and technology for potential issue with security, efficiency, and compliance. Part of the job of a security auditor is to ensure that accurate assessments happen, evidences about a certain item on the assessment, like for example, an audit has happened. They say that, yes, we have this in order to protect this. So an evidence is provided or asked for by the auditor. And the importance of this is, like, for example, the Data Privacy Act of 2012. How do we know that we are actually compliant to the Data Privacy Act? An audit must be performed. An audit or an assessment must be performed in order to make sure, or all the checklists of what the DPA of 2012 says have been complied with evidences to prove that it is actually compliant. This is what's also done on ISO 27001 audits. So a security auditor comes into your organization and then asks you a whole lot of questions, asking for evidences and so on. It's a big, complicated process. I have not encountered that. The assessments I have was on CIS security controls, which is another set of cybersecurity standards, and it's a whole new topic. Anyway, that's the job of a security auditor. Again, we are, for example, you are a company who is processing credit card payments, and therefore you must be compliant with PCI DSS. how does PCIDSS know you've done all the things that they require and an assessment and all that has to be done. All right. Thank you for staying up until the end of this seminar. Well, we're not yet fully finished. But just to summarize of the things that we have discussed, we have understood the definition, scope, and goal of cybersecurity. We looked at the different domains and functions along with the trainings and careers that are available for you in cybersecurity. We also learned about people, process, and technologies, and how it protects confidentiality, integrity, and availability. We now have an idea about this. Cybersecurity is not just about technology, it's also about how your people are trained and what processes you have in place. And also we understood that the heart of cybersecurity is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. We also gained knowledge about the different threat actors, who's out there, and what are they capable of doing, what tools they use, what tactics, and so on. And then we learned about managing risks, that it's not about eliminating it completely, but it's about how do we act on specific risks towards our organization. And lastly, we discussed some of the basic cybersecurity protections and how they are implemented by the organizations. Okay, so again, thank you for listening for now. These are my resources. I can share the slides to you as well. We come to the pre and post activity survey form. Please answer the survey form. This will be part of the webinar. And this is a requirement to get the certificate for this webinar, which is signed by USAID and the Department of Information and Communications Technology. We have a bit of short 5-item quiz in here that will be discussing the answers later on. So for now, I'll give you some 5 to 10 minutes to complete this, and I'll be back after a short while. And also, we'll be answering questions. I'll try to go through your questions and I'll answer them after the post and pre and post activity survey. Hi everyone, please stay tuned. We'll be answering some of the questions you have on the chat box, and also we'll be answering the pre and post assessment in a short while. So while you are answering the pre and post assessment survey form, let's answer some of the questions in the chat box. We have, do you have trainings on incident responder handler that you can provide? And schedule of trainings relevant to this? Yep, we have trainings, but we can provide a list of trainings, but the actual doing the training will be launching some incident handlers, hopefully in the next few months or so within the year, or perhaps during next year, or as long as in the life of, during the time of Beacon project, I hope we can launch one training, a formal full-blown training on incident handling. But I can provide the list of the different incident handling trainings. The pre and post assessment is on the QR link. You can also access https://bit.ly/CPIT launch. What specific systems and tools are used and recommended by the DICT NCERT for SIEM SOAR in incident management? That I cannot provide. We cannot recommend, we're not recommending any specific tools or brands, but SIEM in itself is already a device. SOAR is also a product that is used for insert. But on specific brands, I'm sorry, we cannot provide that. The red team, blue team, and purple team differences. The red team attacks, blue team defends, and the purple team changes based on its knowledge of the attacker. So the blue team is the one that defends, the red team is the one that attacks, and then in the middle is the purple, who's based on how the attacks are happening, it's influencing the blue team on what should be done, or changes, adjustments, configurations, and enhancements. Do you have to have coding or programming skills to be a cybersecurity practitioner? I have no coding or programming skills, absolute zero. So the answer is yes. No, sorry, you don't have to have any programming or coding skills in order to be a cybersecurity practitioners. What antiviruses and anti-malwares are recommended to have? In general, I would recommend internet security software if you have the budget for it, because it covers a wider scope on your computer. And regular antivirus in its most basic form will just act on what's been downloaded or what has executed. An internet security software or suite will have more capabilities and more monitoring features that will keep you safe as you browse the internet. In a man-in-the-middle attack, who is accountable if the user got hacked? The bank or the user? Now, that is a tricky question. It actually depends, because if a man-in-the-middle attack happens in a whole lot of different, typically it happens when a user has already been compromised, or it happens when the attacker and the user are on the same network. But if they are on different parts of the world, the man-in-the-middle of attack is difficult to pull off. You have to be able to compromise the user first, so that wherever he is or she is in the world, the traffic gets forwarded to you first as the attacker, and then you send it to the bank. In terms of who is accountable, it actually depends. If the bank has vulnerabilities that aren't fixed, it could be included in the accountability. But if, on the other hand, the user has not really taken or not complied to policies to protect itself, in that, the accountability goes to the user. Recommend Kaspersky antivirus. I'm sorry, I cannot recommend any specific brand. Is an updated Microsoft security and free yet updated version of Malware Bytes enough for security against malwares and viruses? If not, any alternatives can be used even in low-end devices. Actually, to put it onto simpler perspective, for the most basic use, having something is better than having nothing at all. So whatever they are, free or licensed, it's something that you can install and take advantage of. Can penetration testing detect a 0-day? Depends. Actually, mostly no. 0-day is It could be, but in the real world, 0 days are typically detected by security researchers, threat hunters, and analysts. But on some incidents, well, penetration testing is actually trying to outsmart the target system. 0 day is a certain weakness that doesn't have a particular fix. Most outputs of penetration testing are fixed either through code changes or patches. So yes, in theory, but in practice, it's not really that common in normal penetration testing by third parties down to your software, to your servers. Are password managers advisable? Yes. In connection with encryption, is BitLocker enough for hard drive encryption? Is there no tool to bypass or decrypt it? Yes, BitLocker being built into Microsoft is something you can already leverage on to encrypt your drive. And to bypass or decrypt, again, it's a requirement of a huge computing power to do that. Is AnyDesk secured? I cannot comment on this, sorry, but as with any other software or services used for remote access, like AnyDesk, TeamViewer, LogMe, and so on and so forth, you can always visit their page for these questions on how secure they are and what cybersecurity frameworks or standards they are compliant on. Is it possible for AI to replace people in the pillars of cybersecurity? Maybe in theory, yes, but not. No, I don't. I don't think it will ever be possible. In theory, probably, but on actual, it's probably not something that's going to happen in the near future. We still have lots to improve with AI, and also AI, while it's capable of a lot of things, there's just human elements that AI would never be able to do or catch on, like some critical thinking, decision makings, and so on. The cyber attacks give blockchain a bad reputation because of their relationship to each other. In a way, yes, because ransomwares are, they ask for ransomware payments through cryptocurrency, which is powered by blockchain, which then associates ransomware to blockchain. So in a way, the reputation of blockchain is, and we can't just, especially for non-cybersecurity people, when they hear these two words together, they begin associating it with each other. So in a way, it may be giving some reputation like that to the blockchain. How can companies improve their cybersecurity posture to protect against cyber attacks? Good question. And in order to answer this, and as with any cybersecurity, and as with any project, any endeavor you may have, again, the support of senior management is critical. And being senior management, in order to improve a cybersecurity posture of an organization, the senior management has to support it. And to begin with, a recommendation is to adopt a cybersecurity framework. And in this one, we have the NIST cybersecurity framework for that. And from the adoption of NIST cascades down, the security management ensures that the NIST compliance is enforced, and then the NIST trickles down into technical people and then process technologies and so on, and all combined together will improve the posture of the organization. You don't go with improving cybersecurity posture just by improving technologies, people, or processes. That's a holistic view of how you can improve the cybersecurity posture. Recaptcha reading your browsing history. I have not read any of this, but I don't think it is. How they know we are not robots just by choosing pictures of objects. This is on CAPTCHA. This is leveraging CAPTCHA, by the way, if you're familiar, stands for Completely Automated Public Turing Test to Tell Humans and Computers Apart. Now, they know we aren't robots because with today's capability, some of them may not be able to, let's say, if you're presented with the usual CAPTCHA where a picture of a bus is divided into different blocks and so on. for now, robots or AI may not be yet, although it could possibly be already on some developments, but the goal of CAPTCHA is, in theory, an AI or robot should not be able to figure these out. So that's the whole point of a CAPTCHA. How would they know we are not robots? Because if us humans answer that, it's relatively easy for us to do that. With regard to ransomware, you mentioned that it encrypts files and those files become irretrievable, especially if they don't have any backups. Does this include activity? Yes, I've already answered this. And how really Google Manager in terms of password really secure? Well, it has its own weakness, but for password managers, I would recommend not the ones integrated into browsers, but those whose job is to protect their passwords. They specialize on it. So go for the specialists in this case. So what are the best options to prevent DDoS? Again, rate limiting is one. I've answered this. TunnelBear. There are lots of different free VPNs out there. How would you know if you are a victim of the man-in-the-middle attack? This is interesting. One way is if you browse a certain website and it presents you with a warning says connection is not secure. That is one way that you, although I'm not saying that it is once you access that, but in theory, at least, that's one way, because if the man in the middle is filter or is accessing your, the man in the middle is reading your messages or your transactions, what happens is it has to generate in the world of public infrastructure and so on, and this is a bit more advanced, it has to generate its own certificate to prove to you that he's the bank. So one way of checking this is if you encounter as a connection not secure, check the certificates in there. If it says a different one, then it means it's somewhere in the middle of your connection is probably an entity. So if you go to the bank, let's say bank.com, you can check the certificate. There are ways, you could just Google this one, and the certificate will have a green sign saying that this was signed by this, and that as a proof that it's a proper certificate. But if you get intercepted, the attacker cannot replicate the certificate that the bank also has. So what happens is he has to generate his own certificate and so on, and present that certificate to you, to which something you can check. Hold on a minute, this is not a proper certificate. So probably I am on another website where somebody is trying to infiltrate or be in the middle of my connection. Is it safer to use VPN than a direct connection? Well, that depends, but if you are on public Wi-Fi, I would recommend that yes, do use a VPN instead. But if you're just home, it's relatively safe. But if you are really particular about your privacy, which means if you are home, whatever you do, whatever access you do on your computers, your devices, your internet service provider can see you're accessing Facebook, you're accessing Google, and so on. And that is not really something that's of a big risk to ordinary individuals. But if you're particular that you do not want anyone seeing what sites you access, and so on, then VPN is the way to go. So the VPN is from the perspective of your internet service provider, what the ISP sees is that you're talking to a certain server somewhere out there. That's it. It doesn't know whatever the traffic you are exchanging with that particular server. Unlike if you do not have a VPN, the ISP can see you're accessing Google, you're accessing Facebook, and so on, but that's about it. Even that access to Google and Facebook are encrypted, they couldn't really see the communications happening in between. Okay. Is ECC the same from CC of ISC squared? ECC is our program which leverages on ISC squared's certified in cybersecurity. So you take the training and then complete it with complete the whole training, you get issued with a course completion certificate, and then we issue you a certificate. The DICT and USAID Beacon recognizes that you have completed this training, and that also includes you in our roster of further trainings that Beacon can offer in the future, and including this CPIT webinars. Okay, so I believe we are almost at the end of our webinar. Thank you again for joining me. I do have one more thing to share with you guys. And let's answer. I hope you got these right. This is the answer to the true or false questions in the survey. So according to the risk equation of risk management, if the likelihood of a certain cybersecurity incident is zero, then the overall risk to the organization is not zero. It is false because this is multiplication. If one or both probability and impact is zero, then it means the risk is zero. Technology, while it automates processes and policy implementations, making them smarter and so on, cybersecurity is not all focused on technological solutions. Again, it's a correct mixture of people, process, and technologies. And yes, the goal of cybersecurity is not completely eliminate all risks, but reduce them to a level that can be accepted by the organization. And the need to know enforces only bare minimum capabilities. It's actually least privilege. Bare minimum capabilities, least privilege, and then having the required access is need to know. You have to have a justified reason to access, and that is the concept of need. And lastly, yes, encryption protects confidentiality because only those who are authorized will have a copy of the keys. I'll leave you with this quote from The Art of War by Sun Tzu, a Chinese general back in history. If you know the enemy and you know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. Ladies and gentlemen, in today's topic, we have discussed about our enemy, the threat actors, and we've also discussed about ourselves, how we know cybersecurity, how we are supposed to defend against the cyber attacks. Thank you very much. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'll see you on the next webinar, the introduction of the NIST cybersecurity frameworks and standards on April 28th. That's next month. And also, please do join our ECC or entry-level cybersecurity certification program, and watch out. Keep your inboxes, keep looking at your inboxes. We'll be sharing more information security trainings in the next few months and the next coming year. So again, thank you very much for joining me. I have been Nate, and I hope you have found this informative. Should you have any questions, or if you wanted, if there's any way that Beacon can help your government agency, you feel free to email cybersecurity@beaconactivity.page. Again, thank you and good afternoon.